Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and right now we are here with yet another episode of the show. This is, without a doubt, episode 46, which we like to call it Why We Love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we got two returning guests and a new guest. We're going to start off with you, ZensPath. Welcome.
How's it going?
It's going good. So it's good to have you back on the show.
Always good to be here.
Yep. And it's the Rocketeer. Welcome. This is your first time on here. Good to have you on here.
Yeah, you and I have been mutuals for a while, so I'm glad to finally come on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. And Curt, good to have you back on again.
Thank you for. Oh, hold on.
All right. All good?
Okay, we're all good. Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen.
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, it's good to be back. I've kind of been under the weather the past few months, but yeah, I'm glad to just kind of, try and be on the upswing.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Well, glad to have you on. So,
thank you.
So, we're gonna talk a lot about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in just a little bit, but first and foremost, before we do, ZensPath, what type of content do you do?
So we run the ZensPath Entertainment Network podcast, where me, Steven, Chris, Rachel, and now Chase pretty much will just talk about gaming, tech, all the stuff that's going on, just kind of a weekly nerd fest that we enjoy. So you can find us pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts or YouTube.
Awesome. What about you, Rocketeer? What type of content do you do?
So I co-host the Ninja Turtle Power Hour, which is a weekly, may or may not be an hour-long podcast all about Ninja Turtles content. We review Turtles media through a critical lens of looking at it from our past and with today's eyes.
Yep.
Also talking about all the latest news, comics. We do interviews with creators. And yeah, that's a weekly podcast, comes out every Turtle Tuesday.
Turtle Tuesday, indeed, yes. And what about you, Curt?
So I actually kind of do a few different things, but I feel like I haven't really been active this year due to some kidney and vision problems. But I do Twitch streams every so often when I feel like my eyes aren't going to burn out of my skull. But my main favorite thing to do is a game show at conventions called Double Nintendare, which is a Nintendo themed version of Double Dare, the old Nickelodeon game show. Yep. And yeah, that's always been a lot of fun to put on at like PAX and MagFest and MagWest. And yeah, all those places I can do it at. But yeah, hopefully this summer I'll be going back to those conventions in full swing and yeah, putting on a great show.
All right. So that's a lot of content that you guys have been doing for a while, and I'm happy to hear about that. So, so let's start talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, here's a brief history lesson for those who don't know. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people that know, but it all started in 1984 with two guys, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. They both created one comic together. They bounced off around each other, like making pages, writing the dialogue, creating the characters. And we got the first issue back in May of 1984, and the series is now 40 years old as of this year. All started with a comic, a very small indie comic from a studio called Mirage Studios, which was actually, it was actually in a garage. Like they both made the comic in a garage. And what was a gritty comic series that went on to become a multi-billion-dollar franchise over time, spanning multiple shows, about like five TV shows with a sixth one on the way. Although the less said about one of those shows, the better. And I'm gonna get into that later on. But in addition to comics and the shows, we have the movies, we have video games, we got toys, and we got so many different merch, so many different pieces of merch over the years. throughout its entire life cycle for 40 years, and with lots and lots of fans. Hell, there was even a live stage show, which
Yeah, I have some stories about that.
yes, and let's start off from the beginning. So, Zen, we're going to start with you. How did you get into Ninja Turtles?
So I was the right age when it first came out. So I was right there at the cusp of it. A lot of it was in that early, like kind of the later 80s. Not the comic book, because I was like 4 or 5 at the time, for at that when it first came out. But when the cartoon started is when I got into it. It was a huge boom. Like I tried to find it earlier, but like my elementary, we did our yearbook where we made a Ninja Turtle theme and kind of handmade those. I've got somewhere. But that's kind of what drew us in, was that early cartoon, and then the Archie comics is what I also got into a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's how you started.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about you, Rocketeer?
For me, I also am a child of the 80s, so I grew up with the original cartoon. That was my introduction to the Turtles, and then heavy into the Playmates action figures. That was, I think at times when I was younger, I loved those figures more than the show, because as we recapped the show on our show, I kind of discovered how much I hadn't watched and remembered. So definitely the action figures. I tried the Archie comics before they deviated from the show, and then also the original Nintendo trilogy.
Yeah.
And also the 1990 movie was the first movie I saw in theaters. So,
oh, nice. Very good. Curt, what about you?
So yeah, I started with the cartoon as well, but it's hard for me to really pinpoint like when I started watching it or when I kind of became a fan, because I have autism and I was like kind of like nonverbal for the first like 3 or 4 years of my life, and there's a lot of memories that just kind of like meld together when I'm trying to think back, like, well, what are some of my first memories? And I feel like Ninja Turtles was one of those things that was just always kind of a part of my memory, so I never really remember the first time I watched it. But yeah, that cartoon definitely was a big thing for me, and I really love the video games as well. I mean, aside from it's hard to say that if I liked that first game as a kid or if I just didn't know what bad games were back then. But it's just like, yeah, I was just very, very into Ninja Turtles a lot. I had a few toys, but I don't remember too many of them. The most vivid one I remember having was the talking turtles, where you had to put like a little plastic strip in the shell and like yank it out, and it'll just like kind of make a voice happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just a vague approximation of a voice line. But yeah, I didn't have any big toys or anything like that. But yeah, it's just the cartoon and video games, and yeah, definitely the movies were a big part of my childhood.
Oh yeah. For me, it all started when my older brother and one of my older cousins, one of my older cousins came in. Like, they came over one of the days when I was like 3 years old. By this point, the third season was like coming out. Like they were doing reruns of the first and the second season. Like it was gonna go syndication again for like the first 2 seasons plus all the additional episodes. So it ended up being 65 episodes around that time, or close to it. By that point, season 3, it was like 1989. I remember watching. And what I remember was, like, I was very small, but I still loved it. The Turtles fighting Shredder, Krang, and the rest of the group that he brings in with him. There will be some other villains too. The fact that they love pizza, yet April O'Neil, Splinter. There was a character on the show that I expected to see more of, like, whenever I would rewatch the show, but he only appeared in a few episodes, and that was Casey Jones, because he appeared a lot more everywhere else.
Yeah.
I've watched the movies in the theaters, especially like the third movie. which that movie was a disappointment. But
I got a good story about that one, so we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But the first Ninja Turtles game I played was the second one. It was actually the arcade version of it. It was actually so. I started in video games in 1990. When I got my NES with Super Mario and Duck Hunt, but there was like a local deli near me that happened to have an arcade machine. Like they had a cabinet of the first Ninja Turtles game. It was just called Ninja Turtles, but people just label it as the 1989 arcade game. And at the time, like I played it, didn't know what I was doing. I was in the first stage, I died, and then my dad said, "All right, it's time to go." That's it. That was the first time I've ever played that game. But first time I beaten that game was when I was a teenager through emulation, because that was how I when I discovered emulation, that's how I actually got into going back to playing some of the Ninja Turtles games that I either never owned or never finished. And that's when I went to go back to playing that one, as well as Turtles in Time arcade, because I do have Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo, as well as Tournament Fighters. Like the video games were like a huge part of my life. Hyperstone Heist and the Sega Genesis was also there. And then it's like I grew up with some other Ninja Turtles series. Like I grew up with the show all the way up to, I want to say like the season that I stopped watching was probably season 6, because I know I was watching seasons 1 through 5 religiously, but then season 6 I think is maybe because of the fact that there were some other shows that I was watching, and then like my interest in watching new episodes kind of waned. I would watch here and there, but not as much. Then there would be reruns on like certain channels, like USA Network had reruns for a while. Then the original show hasn't been rerun in the United States until last year, where now it's being rerun on Nickelodeon because they bought the rights to the original show, so that now they own it, and it could also be on Paramount Plus. And now it's like I've seen so many different incarnations of Ninja Turtles to the point where I've been a lifelong fan, and I still am. So I got into Ninja Turtles. So TLDR, I got into Ninja Turtles in 1989, and the rest is history. Yep. So the next thing we'll talk about is, let's talk about the Ninja Turtle shows, comics, movies, and whatever other mediums they happen to be a part of, that we've watched or followed. And we also talk about our memories with this entire series. And we'll start with you, Rocketeer, for this one. We'll start with you.
Oh, okay. So wait, we're just naming off the show?
You can name off the shows, you can name off like pretty much anything.
So for me, like the way I approach Turtles is that it's all one great big multiverse and everything matters. I have a least favorite TMNT, but I don't hate any of it.
Right.
But if I were to go off the ones that I kind of follow the most, it would be the IDW series, which is about to relaunch next month with a brand new volume starting at #1 again. Rise of the TMNT is definitely my favorite of the 4 cartoons, soon to be 5 cartoons.
Nice.
And also, it's kind of cheesy nowadays, but the 1990 movie for me is still one of my favorites too.
Yes.
But
that's just a legitimately good movie.
It is. It's corny when you try, and we have this discussion on our show a lot. It's corny, and it is kind of hard for certain modern audiences. Because the suits are kind of goofy looking, and it's a magical time because we saw it when we were younger. Like I said, it was the first movie I had seen in movie theaters, and for us growing up on the 87 series, like it was so fundamentally different than that show. So it's like, whoa, these turtles curse. Oh man, everything's grungy. But like nowadays, the turtles have a different appeal to younger kids. So it's like, how much does that original movie resonate with younger kids? It's such, because when you watch it, it's such a low stakes movie, but there's a lot of heart in it.
Yeah.
And that's what I personally love about it. I mean, because I go back and forth. I like it when the turtles are low stakes, but I also like it when they're in outer space. So I'm nothing if I'm not a complicated Turtles fan.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of really good mediums. Like we're like I know you talked about the toys briefly, but was there anything else that you followed? Like the did you follow any of the other video games after the NES games or?
Oh, with the video games, I played the hell out of the original trilogy.
Yes.
And then I was a Sega Genesis kid, so I didn't get the Super Nintendo, and I never played Turtles in Time really until like years later.
Yeah.
But I also didn't even have Hyperstone Heist. For some reason, just never got it. And then when the 2003 series came back, I was a senior in high school, and kind of, I mean, I've always been a nerdy kid, so like I was excited that the Turtles were coming back, but I never the 2003 show never clicked with me in any like particular way, and we're actually going through that show right now on our podcast, and I'm experiencing a lot of that show for the first time because I never made it past the first season. I've seen episodes from later seasons, and I've seen the TV movie Turtles Forever, which is fantastic. But the 2003 show never really caught on with me. I got the first wave of figures, I got the first video game, and then that was kind of it.
Yeah.
For a long time. I also really liked The Next Mutation, which was the live action show that everybody hates. It's not bad. It's actually, it pulls a lot of ideas from the original Mirage comic, which we found out when we did our recap of that. And so like that's my kind of through line for a while, and then Peter Laird sold the series to Nickelodeon in 2009, and then we get the 2012 show, and I was 100% on board. I was back, Turtle Mania, baby.
Yep.
I found a store that broke the street date on the first action figures. Nice. So I got those, took the day off from work to watch the first show, got myself a pizza, and then the rest is history. You know, I like the Michael Bay movies. I mean, going and then getting more involved with the Turtles community at this point is also when I really started kind of researching into the history and trying to become more of a Turtles, not quite a historian, but somebody you can point to and, for lack of a better term, be an expert.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, oh, I don't know this about Turtles. Oh, let's ask Mike. My name's Mike.
Yes.
You know, that, and I mean, and jokingly on my Twitter, Nickelodeon said they endorse my expertise, and so ever since then I've called myself a certified turtle expert.
Nice.
There we go.
Very good.
But yeah, like being and then especially when I joined my show in 2020, getting even more involved because now I've met creators and artists and writers, and you know, I have, you know, DMs with these people, and I've gone to lunch with some of them, and I mean, a big part of it is being in California. Some of them are here, and then I have easy access to San Diego Comic-Con where I can also see them.
Yeah.
But I love this franchise so much because it's so varied and it offers so many things for different people. And it's like, if you don't like the cartoon, then you can pick up the comic book and then just wait for the next one. And also, like, especially with Nickelodeon now, how you mentioned that they just bought the rights to the Fred Wolf 1987 series, like that's bringing it out to a new generation so that kids can watch it. And, you know, they also, when they started Paramount Plus a couple of years ago, the 2003 show was the first Turtle show they put on there in its entirety. And like that's a big deal because 2003 fans always feel super unrepresented in by Nickelodeon. And that was a huge deal. Like that was like 2003 Leonardo was in the commercial with RuPaul and, you know, Patrick Stewart. Like that was a big deal. And so Nickelodeon, for all their faults, I don't agree with everything they have done with the franchise since then, but I really, really, really do think it's in the best hands it can be.
Yeah.
Because Nick knows what they have. I think, and this is probably for a later part of our discussion, but I think Nick has a problem with knowing how to tackle what they have.
Yeah. I feel like they just kind of like are afraid of something not reaching SpongeBob levels of success.
Exactly.
Like if something's not,
Yeah, and that's always been kind of Nickelodeon's barometer. It has to be SpongeBob or it's nothing. And Rise of the TMNT has a very famous troubled history because of that. You know, its original numbers didn't come anywhere close to SpongeBob numbers. And the show, you know, got bumped to Nicktoons. It went on hiatus. Playmates canceled the toy line after like wave 2. Like, you know, and Nick goes into that panic mode. You know, they bought this franchise because they needed a boys toys franchise. And, you know, granted, Rise didn't hit for a lot of older Turtles fans. I think if they gave it a chance, anybody could find something they like with that show.
Yeah.
But it is kind of interesting how quickly Nick panicked at that show, because Mutant Mayhem, the current movie, went into production while they were in the middle of trying to figure out what to do with Rise.
Yeah.
So it's like they were already writing that off before it had even finished its second season.
Yeah. And then it's like Mutant Mayhem did well in the movie theaters. However, I believe that Nickelodeon wanted more out of that, but it had the unfortunate like fate of releasing around the time when I think the writer's strike was wrapped up, but the actor's strike was still going on.
Like the four boys who played the Turtles in that movie. I think it was Micah Abbey who plays Donatello, or it was either Micah Abbey who plays Donatello or Nicholas Cantu who plays Leo. But one of the two were like, "It's our first movie, and we can't do press for it."
Yes, because
right.
That really has to
they
suck.
were so disappointed.
Yeah.
It
But
was very confusing at the time between what voice actors could do versus actors, and it was all back and forth on that too.
yeah, exactly.
That didn't help.
And the four boys were very good about it, and they were like, we can't talk about it, and they didn't, and it wasn't until everything was done, and then Micah Abbey's the one who's most vocal on Twitter, and he's just going through, he's liking people's tweets to him and following people. Like he's great, love him. But as far as like Mutant Mayhem, I think it's like a mixed bag. I think Nick knew it wasn't going to do insane numbers, but I think they anticipated the toy line doing as well as it did, which Nick kind of announced around that same time that the Turtles franchise, at least I think since they bought it in the fiscal year they were in, it reached $1 billion in sales. And that doesn't just include Mutant Mayhem, but it came out around that time when all those waves were selling out. Because this includes licensing for the old stuff. So we have like the NECA figures, Super 7, all of those other licenses.
Yes.
As well as the Mutant Mayhem stuff. But I mean, $1 billion in toy sales in a year is very good.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was insane. Like, so let's move on to you, Curt.
Okay.
So tell me what shows you've watched, as well as the movies, and if you read the comics or played the video games and whatnot.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I definitely started with that 87 series. I can't pinpoint when exactly I became a fan, but yeah, I was just really, really into that show. I would watch it every Saturday morning, or whenever it was on USA or whatever network reruns were on. Yeah, and then I got the first. I can't remember if I got both the video games at the same time on the NES. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think I did get both of them for Christmas. I think in '91. I probably did rent them before, but yeah. This was during a time where I did not have the concept of a video game being bad. I just thought it was just like, it was just either just really hard or just really, just fun. Yeah. Basically, like the concept of a piece of media being bad was not entered into my brain just yet at that age. But that first game in particular was really rough. Like I don't think I ever got past the third level where you actually got into the turtle van.
God, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's fine.
I love that first game so much. And it's like, you always hear people, the swimming level's the worst. I can't beat it. I was beating that when I was 4.
Like, yeah, that was my main
every bomb location.
You had to memorize it, but it's like I discovered I had the TISM back then, and so it's like that was my thing.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that third level and also the airport levels, that's where I never got past.
Yeah, it's strange because I just kept playing that. Like, I just kept playing it, and I feel like I did enjoy it because it was Ninja Turtles, and it's just like, oh, this is a Ninja Turtles thing. That means I have to like it. Because, again, just no concept of a bad piece of media. But, in terms of the cartoon, though, going back to the cartoon, I feel like I don't really have a ton of memories of like certain plot points or things like that. There are certain episodes that still like stuck out to me, like with the Rat King and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think the one where I think Shredder and Michelangelo's brains get transferred.
Yes,
yeah, I remember that episode a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but yeah, in terms of like, I just enjoyed watching the show, but I didn't really get a semblance of like an ongoing story for some reason. For whatever reason, that just I didn't really retain too many memories of like major plot points or story beats or anything like that, which is really strange because like that was like a show I have such vivid memories of, like actually sitting down to watch, but just like, I don't know, it's weird how none of that really like stuck with me as a kid, I guess, in terms of, and then again, it's just like, that was back when I wasn't really watching a lot of shows that had ongoing plots. Like it was just a random adventure of the week.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just how my brain was processing it. Like the ongoing plot just didn't matter. It was just a random wacky adventure every week. But but I have much fonder memories of the video games, honestly. Like as much as I love the cartoon, and the video games and the movies in particular are the ones where I feel like I have those more like solid memories of. Like so that first game, whatever, but the Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, like I did play it in the arcade, and I did play the NES version a lot. That was also back in the day where I just didn't really like kind of grasp like the concept of quote unquote better graphics. So it's like I just assumed like, oh yeah, this is just like the arcade game, just playing the NES one.
Yeah.
Except it was just 2 players and stuff. And I don't know if I ever even beat that game without a Game Genie, to be honest. But that game was a lot of fun. I never really got the third one. That was the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
It's just like I feel like I skipped over that one. I just never really saw it in the rental store. And Turtles 4 was just absolutely mind blowing to me. That was just like just such good music. Like that, the soundtrack to that game, the SNES version in particular, is just still just an absolute phenomenal soundtrack. And I still listen to it to this day, just on random occasions, just like. God, it's just I don't want to listen to it right now, honestly. But yeah, this is such a fantastically paced game. Just the combat just feels really, really good, and one of the few games that I would actually just put on the hardest difficulty, and because like you obviously got the best ending with that, but it just became one of the things where it's like, yeah, I would just want to go through this game and just completely master it, and yeah, and I did. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Let's see. And yeah, there wasn't really, I didn't really get into the tournament fighter games for whatever reason. I don't know. They just never really captured my interest. Even seeing them at the video store. I have no idea why. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of my Ninja Turtle memories, just like, I have so much fondness for this franchise, but there was just a period where I just like, I just stopped watching the show. Like I was actually kind of surprised to learn how long that show went on. Because because I just don't know what happened. I just stopped watching it one day. It's just like I didn't like seek the show out to see when it was on. It just kind of fell out of my consciousness, I guess, in terms of just like, going out of my way to watch it. Maybe because that's when Power Rangers first started.
Yeah.
Yeah, then my interest just like, swayed to that. But yeah, those movies, yeah. But yeah, I have, fond memories of those movies. Those first three excuse me. Those first three movies. I don't know if I saw that first one in theaters. But I definitely saw the second and third one in theaters for sure. Mm-hmm. And yeah, those are fun times, even though like, the third one just isn't great.
Yeah.
I honestly think that first movie still holds up really well today. I still think that's just a legitimately good movie, especially for a comic book adaptation. And like, the second movie was definitely super, super cheesy. But I still really enjoyed it. I actually, like, as a kid, I did prefer the second movie to the first one. Mainly because, like, I was just more of a, like, comedic taste, basically. Like, I like more slapstick comedy stuff more than serious stuff. And I feel like that first movie had its moments, but it's like, it definitely was, like, one of those things where it's just like, oh, this is too serious, too boring. But yeah, as I grew up, I realized, okay, well, everything doesn't need to be silly all the time. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy those movies a lot. Let's see. So I never watched the live action show, even though I was fully aware of it. I saw commercials of it. I, knew of Venus and all that. It's just like, oh, a new Ninja Turtle. That's interesting. But it's just, again, for whatever reason, I just had no temptation to really ever watch it. So I don't know if there was just something else that was on during that time slot. So yeah, you have to remember, this is back in the day where if you didn't have like, a VCR set up, like you had to basically like commit to a show. It like, because like, if a show was on at a certain time and another show was on that you liked at a certain time, yeah, you basically had to choose. Yes. Like you just had to just shut one out. Like you couldn't just catch a rerun unless like maybe you had a VCR set up in another room just to record it. But I just didn't feel the need to. So
I remember having to deal with like, what time did school let out? How fast can I get home? Can I get home in time to catch the episode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was me for a while. Like maybe that was it. Like maybe just Ninja Turtles is on it. No, that wasn't on during weekdays, was it?
It was Fridays.
Eventually it was.
It was Fridays and I believe Saturdays as well.
Yeah. So it was just So yeah, it's just I'm having a hard time just trying to realize like why I didn't watch it after a while, because like I was still aware of Ninja Turtles. I still played those video games a lot, and I still love those movies. But yeah, it's so weird. I just can't remember why I stopped watching. But yeah, it was just big Ninja Turtle hiatus for a while. Then they announced the 2003 show, and I was a little bit skeptical because like, oh yeah, they're going a little weird with it, and 4Kids is involved with it, and 4Kids' reputation was still kind of trashy back then. But I was actually genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed that 2003 show. So that was like something I would, actually tune in every Saturday morning to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just really into it. And that was also the time where it's just like, I feel like a lot of my peers were entering that cynical phase of like media taste, where it's just like, I'm not watching no cartoons, blah, 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 things like that. I never really got that. I never really entered that phase of my life. Yeah. Yeah, we grew up. We watched mature stuff like
I've
MTV.
never stopped watching cartoons.
Yeah, same.
I watch more cartoons now.
Mm. But yeah, that was also the time during like, where I just started talking to more people on, message boards and AOL Instant Messenger, and finding out, oh, there's actually people like me that still like this stuff.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
And I never really I never really watched the other two shows, the shows that started on Nickelodeon. Like, I watched the first episode of the CGI show they did, and I did really enjoy that. But yeah, it was just one of those things I just never kept telling myself, oh, I should watch more of that. And I eat a bagel instead. Mm-hmm. And I just kept putting it off. But honestly, I feel like now it's time. I have the time to do that. So
basically how you were with that show, that's how it was with Rise. Like I'm like, I should watch more of this, and I haven't had much of a chance to do so. I'm gonna fix it soon.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It's only 39 episodes in a movie. You can get it done in an afternoon. I'm telling you.
Oh, it's that short?
It's when I was talking about a troubled production.
Yep.
It's only 39 episodes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it did not last that long.
Yeah, and most of them are only 11 minutes. So I said, you can get through it and the movie in an afternoon.
Yeah, I think it seemed longer just because of production issues held up different parts of it, so it spread out, even though it took
2018 to 2020 for all 39 episodes, and then the movie didn't come out until 2022. So it's like the Rise era is 4 years, but it's like nothing came out.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? There is another very, very important piece of Turtles media I do want to discuss.
Okay.
The Ninja Turtles coming out of their Shells tour.
Oh, let's go.
So that was a very, very interesting musical. I guess you could call it a musical.
You should have had some of that music ready to queue up. That'd be just terrible and great.
One of the tracks is actually Pizza Power. It's actually the arcade Turtles in Time.
Yeah, that's right.
So interesting thing about that, I did not know of that musical's existence until I want to say maybe the mid 2000s, where I was browsing my local Goodwill store and looking through all their videotapes, and I came across a videotape of that, the Ninja Turtles coming out of their Shells tour. Like, what the hell is this? So just out of morbid curiosity, I bought that for like maybe $2, and yeah, that was definitely an experience I was not expecting at all. So basically the gist of if you've never seen it, it is a live stage show that they produced in the early 90s. I want to say 90, 91 or so, where it's just the Ninja Turtles realize that they can do just as good with the power of music as they can with their weapons. So they just put on this rock musical, and like Shredder comes in and is just like, oh, I hate music, I'm going to destroy music. And just zaps them of their powers to actually be able to produce music. And yeah, it's really strange. It's very...
So much fun. I had it on cassette, It was a partnership with Pizza Hut, and buying a pizza at the time got you the soundtrack, and it was just it's so good.
Oh yeah.
Like I still hum some of the songs.
Yeah. Growing up in a glass bowl, convenience lists and tadpoles, hardly enters your mind that there's something better than this. I could sing this whole song. I'll save you.
Walk Straight was always one of my favorites because it's a terrible rap. Beats Power, classic. Tubin is another one.
Oh yeah.
And then Skipping Stones, the song from Splinter, is just like, oh. It's so cringy, but it's like, ugh. And then, God, I forgot what April's song is called, but it's like,
I think it's You Can Count on Us.
No, it's because they all come back for Count on Us.
Oh, that's a reprise, of her song, yeah.
April's Ballad is just what it's called. It doesn't even have a name.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a girl. She doesn't need no song title.
No Treaties. Ugh.
Yeah. No treaties after the war.
Yeah, it's like it's the music in here is all over the place, and it's like I think Splinter's the one that convinced them to become a band, like in the storyline of the show, and then it's like, God, yeah, you
can touch people with your music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
It's been so long since I've actually watched it, but like, I've listened to it recently.
So I watched that multiple times for a very interesting reason. So when I got that tape was also the time where Google Video became a thing. I don't know if you remember Google Video.
I do.
Yeah. So this was around, YouTube, I think, just launched, and also Google Video. I don't know if Google Video came before YouTube. This is before Google bought YouTube. Mm-hmm. But I was actually the first person to ever upload the Coming Out of Their Shells tour to the internet.
Huh.
Yeah, so I had a really just crappy Hapauji card. I think that's how you pronounce that company. Yeah, one of the earlier capture. Yeah, I think they're still around. But I had a really crappy computer and just a really old Hapauji card. And I definitely wanted to just like introduce people to this absolute insanity. So I had to basically like try and encode that multiple times because my computer's so crappy that the audio would get out of sync. Because basically, I had to plug in my VCR into the capture card and just let the movie play just in its entirety. And then when the movie was done, encoding, I had to wait for it to encode and stuff like that and see if the audio and video would actually match up. And a lot of those times it wouldn't because, again, my computer was crap. So it took multiple attempts to finally just get all that in sync. And and if you ever just watch that show on YouTube or Google Video or wherever, that source was most likely my video.
Yep. And
so
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's just like, I never really think about like how much impact one person can, like, someone like me could have. Because I never really think about it that much. It's just like, I just uploaded the video, and it's just like, I have to wonder if that's just like because of me is like the reason anyone was introduced to that experience.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. But
I still absolutely love that. Even as bad as it is, it's just that still holds a giant place. Did you
see the action figures that NECA came out with?
Yeah. I really wanted to get those. I'm probably still not on sale anymore.
They were 2020 San Diego Comic-Con and New York.
Oh, they were Comic-Con. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But because of the shutdowns, there was no Comic-Con, so they dumped them in Target. And that was the only way to get them.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw those, and I just, for whatever, I guess I just never thought thought about hunting them down because I thought they were just a con exclusive. So it's just like, oh, that's out of my reach. Whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, those were some really good memories that you got.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Zen, it's your turn.
So for me, a lot of it comes down to the original cartoon. Obviously, that's when that first got announced. I remember seeing, commercials for it when it was starting up. Little kid watching TV and seeing that. And that's the one even today I still watch. I've got the series on DVD, and I'll get my kids to watch it. And kind of, as I grew up and had them, watched it with them as well. The later ones, I did get into some of those. Rise, I got into a little bit later. The 2012, the CG one, I really did enjoy. When I first saw it, I was kind of iffy about how it looked until I watched it, and I do like how they kind of were changing more of how the turtles would be more individually, look individually, and the little touches, things like that. It ended up being a lot better because of what it tied to, but the movie was a huge milestone for people of my age. And I agree. I think it's aged really well because that was kind of the golden moment of the comic hit, the cartoon had hit, was doing really well. And then when they made the movie, it had touches from the comics. It had touches from the cartoon. You had, the Jim Henson Productions or Jim Henson Studios working on it, which is why those suits hold up so well today. Except physically hold up. If you go and look and see what's left of them now, it is nightmare fuel. But I do love that they have a set of figures that's out right now where it's the four turtles as different old Universal monsters. Mm-hmm. And I think Michelangelo is the mummy, and he comes with a replacement head that is what's left of the original movie's head with the mouth, like the teeth exposed and stuff. And it's a replacement head to show the rotting skin. It's just a great little touch that they included that. So you definitely need to go find that.
Yes.
The second movie, though, I did really like that one a lot as well, because, that was aimed more towards kids and so forth. And we're going to have to admit it exists. It's where the ninja rap came from.
Yes.
That's
the only
one of the few good things of Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, really.
Can you really call it good?
Well,
in retrospect, I will somehow say yes.
Good in comparison to everything else he's done, for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
I mean,
what, you didn't like Cool as Ice?
I had some of the tapes.
I don't want to talk about Cool as Ice.
Whatever.
You had a flat top?
But I loved, they were some of the original characters. They came from that still stick around. Like, I have a lot of the stuff from like Toka and Razor. Mm-hmm. For those, like, they had pop figures that just came out recently of those I've grabbed. I have the original figures of them because I always really enjoyed how those two were, because it was much more slapstick.
Yeah.
Of course, I had the Super Shredder, where they mutated him, and that toy was plastic, but it had so many sharp points all over it, if you guys remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a cartoon version and the movie ones, which the movie Turtles, did you guys, because I had a lot of the toys. The movie ones were kind of like a rubbery, like they tried to make them look like the suits.
Yeah.
They felt weird to me because I was using hard plastic. And you're just like, this isn't right. And I can only imagine how poorly those have aged with so many other rubber items of all this time rotting away.
I'm always worried about action figures like that, because there are some other figures of turtles that have come out with like that rubberized skin, and those have degraded faster.
Oh,
than those original figures.
Yeah.
So.
You also had the slime, the ooze that you could put onto a lot of them, which I'm sure has caked on and destroyed a lot of things. Like the toys were I think that was their gold mine, because they went to town. They still go to town on those things for the different variations. Like the favorite one that I had was a Raphael where he was in an astronaut suit, and it even had the bubble helmet you could put on there. And I would stay with my grandparents during the summer and go next door to their neighbor's pool. We could use it. And I would just take him in the water because the helmet would hold just enough air to actually keep his head dry. So, of course, that's a child's dream come true. The sticker wore up his chest, but I still have that one. I like it in the condition it is.
Yep.
But you had, they were doing transforming ones that could become from a baby turtle to this really weird formed turtle itself. You know, just the toy market was ridiculous. But the one thing I didn't get that I wanted was a lot of the vehicles. And I have stuff like Hot Wheels has come out with great smaller versions of the Turtle Wagon now. Which I don't know. Did any of you guys actually have the Turtle Wagon back then, or any of the vehicles for the toys?
I had a few. So I had the original Party Wagon.
Mhm.
I had the Turtle Copter, the Turtle Blimp.
I got the pizza launcher. Do you remember that one?
I did have the pizza thrower. Yeah.
Well, you could hurt somebody with that thing.
I do remember that.
Playmates just revealed on the Turtle Tracks podcast that they're coming out again with the pizza thrower.
Oh God,
Nice.
So that's coming back out. I had the pizza thrower, and then my favorite one. Oh God, there was the foot scooter, and then the toilet taxi.
I remember the toilet taxi. There was what was the foot one that looked like a spider?
That was the Knucklehead.
Yes, I'm bad about the names, but I had the Knucklehead. Like I said, the toys were half the fun of that, because you'd watch the cartoon and then you'd go off and have your adventures with your turtles, and they combine with all kinds of stuff. And they've been continuing that, where they had so many crossovers with so many different things over the years. Because we mentioned Power Rangers earlier, and that's kind of the beginning of the end of the original cartoon, where Power Rangers came in, and for that generation, which included my little brother, you know, that was what they were into. And I got excited about Power Rangers when it first came out, because me and my best friend at the time were like, it's going to be a live action Voltron. And we watched the first episode and went, no.
It wasn't.
Just
The hell is
bounced
this?
right off of it. My brother, he loved it.
Ironically enough, they crossed over multiple times.
I was about to say, when they came out with the live action Turtles, which I kind of bounced off that myself, because I also knew of the concerts and stuff, and was like, okay, no, I don't think I'm in for this. Which I was trying to say earlier, that was oddly common back then. Like the Simpsons had albums, like different shows would have musical numbers, or there was all this on ice happened way more than you would think. Like Thunder, crying out loud, had an ice show. So
it's how it was back in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, for that matter, for mediums.
Yeah. It's terrifying. It's great to go back and see, and you know, I try and record weird media that I find and put it up on the YouTube channel. So the fact that you actually did put up that old show for everyone is doing God's work. That's we all need to remember what happened so we don't repeat it.
Yeah, so I actually did re-upload that not too long ago so I have, like, you know, way better capture equipment now, so I was able to actually just re-encode that in 60 frames, so like the original like 60 frames of the tape, so like you can see that in its all smooth glory.
I'm gonna have to find some of my old promotional Turtles tapes and stuff like that, because I've got the whole setup for recording VHS and everything through like a RetroTink and an AverMedia capture card and everything to actually get it down to the right frame rate. And
I actually have a kind of a rare VCR that actually outputs an HDMI itself.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so like that's like when I saw that, it's just like, okay, yeah, that's going to make capturing things way easier.
Yeah, I'm curious how it does the conversion. But onto Turtles itself, I bounced off the live action. Rise, I saw parts of it, but I wasn't really clicking at the time. You know, I was in my early 20s at that point and dealing with my kids and so forth, and they weren't quite old enough to watch Ninja Turtles yet. But the 2012 series, the CG one, when that came in, like I said, I really got back into it. I haven't heard much. Have you guys watched much of TMNT?
The 2007 movie?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
I got a lot to talk about that one too. So.
I like.
Yeah, so I watched that when it first came out in theaters, but I don't think I ever rewatched it.
That's one of the handful of movies I still have on HD DVD.
Wow, nice.
I still have a player for it too.
Yep.
Nice.
I did eventually get it on Blu-ray later when I finally stubbornly gave up on that dream. I was the HD DVD guy. I was like, I'm gonna hold out. I have the player.
Yeah, my dad was the one that just like, when Blu-ray and HD DVD first came out, he put his horses on HD DVD.
I
I
tried to convince my dad to go to HD DVD because I wanted him to get an Xbox with the player.
Yeah.
But then we settled on a PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, a lot of the toys, I've been picking up some of the stuff later on. Like a lot of the Turtles things have kind of picked up from there. I didn't want to bring them in here because they're massive, but I have a whole like statue set of the Turtles from the cartoon. Like they're in her bedroom. My wife was just like, no, put them in here. She loves that stuff. But it also includes an absolutely massive Krang, Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady. And thankfully, back then for the cartoon, it was very cheesy for the time, but I think the way they had to kind of make that for kids, and they at least worked with Laird and them to somewhat kidify it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original comics, people don't understand how ridiculous and violent those were.
Yeah.
They were getting drunk, they were beheading people, they were doing all kinds of stuff. And I did not get to read those until way later because we had no internet back then,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I could just go to a comic book store. I couldn't even drive. I wasn't even 10. So the comics I finally got into were the Ninja Turtle Adventures, which was the Archie's brand comics that came out in regards to the cartoon, which went off on their own tangent stories that got absolutely ridiculous for a while. Which they did that a lot anytime that happened. The newer comics, I kind of regret that I haven't gotten as much into. I've seen parts of them and I really wanted to get into them. And I'm not going to spoil them, but I did, I do have Ronin. I did get those, the hardbacks for those.
I still got to get that.
They're great. I do like where that story went. But
Yeah.
I guess the last little one I want to cover is some of the crossovers that have happened. Recently the Turtle Van is actually being made into a Transformer that can transform into the turtle, and that turtle can change into all four of the turtles. Like not separately, but like you can change it to be Leo, Donnie, Raph, or Mikey if you want. It has the weapons that go with them, but they'll become back to the van. So I've got that I'm waiting on. But did any
Same, I have that pre-ordered.
Yes, a moment that and Ghostbusters. I was so happy to see that one too.
Yeah.
Did any of you watch the Ninja Turtles and Batman feature film?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did.
I almost forgot about that one. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite Batman films.
They did such a great thing. Now, if you're looking for toys and you can only pick one good set, hunt that set down. That's some of the best Ninja Turtles figures and some of the best Batman figures together. And then they had a convention one that I found later that it's just Mikey, where he's wearing the Batman cowl stretched over his head. And I was so happy to have found that one. But most people no one ever talks about that. It's such an underrated film for how great it is.
Yeah. Like I said, I watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it, but yeah, I just completely blanked out of my memory for some reason.
It's funny.
Brought it up.
It's funny because you mentioned the toys.
Yeah.
I remember, because I knew I was going to get them. So I had pre-ordered them all at GameStop. They were GameStop exclusives.
Yep. I had my in there, and that's how I got them.
And the so I was paying full price for them. They were $50 each, which I was fine with. I've been collecting toys, so I knew that was a standard price.
Yeah.
And then nobody was buying them, so they started going to clearance.
Oh.
And you can get them as cheap as like $5, and people still weren't buying them. And now they're, it's been several years and they're gone, and now all of a sudden they've become the hot ticket. Not the hottest figures around, but people really want those ones now. And it's like, well, you had your shot. I mean,
yeah, the animation and the fights in that whole movie were so well done. The Batman and Shredder going head to head was so beautifully done.
And it changes. It's based on the Batman versus the TMNT comic, which there are 3 volumes on. This is primarily based on the first one.
Yeah.
But the art style I always found interesting is based on a different artist. named Andy Kuhn who did the IDW comic. So it's not even like based on the art of Freddie Williams, who did the Batman books.
Right.
Yeah.
I just found that interesting.
It was probably easier for animation, and it goes over well with animation. It's very clean. You can tell with the action and everything. And
Yeah.
you know, for any of this stuff with Ninja Turtles, it has to be toyetic. They have to be able to make something of this.
Yeah.
And it lended itself beautifully to that.
Yes, indeed.
So I cannot recommend that enough. People need to go hunt that down.
Yep.
Game wise, I rented the original Ninja Turtles a lot. I had a hard time getting my parents to buy me any games when I was a kid, which of course, you know, I would get one a year on my birthday or Christmas, which was for me the same day. So the year I got Spy vs. Spy, that's the game I had for a year that I beat the same day.
Oh.
Yeah. So Ninja Turtles never quite made it to that level where I could get them to buy one, but I could rent them all the time. So I'm very familiar with the opening level of Ninja Turtles. I didn't get past most of it until I either memorized it and had time to get it each week, or finally got a Game Shark, or Game Genie.
Yeah, Game Genie.
Game Shark is later. And of course, I dove into a lot of that older stuff via emulation, you know, because you could rewind and mess with stuff there. The arcade game, though, I did get to go and play that on occasion while I was out, and I played the original one, but then when we had, you know, the big multiplayer one, you'd find and try and get people together to play it. I was always going after Donatello because he's always been my favorite turtle. That's just been my guy.
Yep.
It just coincidentally he was better in some of the games because of that bow staff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The Game Boy games I got to try out. Other people had them, but I've only recently, like I had 1 and 3. I managed to finally get my copy of 2 this weekend, so I have that now. Finished the trilogy. So, you know, the games were great because my friends would get them and we'd play, you know, Turtles in Time. I didn't get to mess with the arcade game on the NES that much because I think I'd had such a rough time with the first one. We just kind of skipped the second one because, you know, why would I waste my one rental that week? You know, doing that when I have so many other things on the NES to explore.
Yeah.
So thankfully we've had a resurgence of the collections. The Cowabunga collection is probably one of the greatest gifts to Ninja Turtle fans of my age.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Ever. Not only for the game itself, but the extra content. And then, you know, you've got Shredder's Return, which has been, God, that thing is so beautifully animated. I
freaking love that game. I still need to get the DLC for that, but yeah.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I bought it physically twice just to get it, and still bought it for it.
Nice.
And,
yeah, like everything about that game is just so much fun. It's beautiful. Like I've been in that Discord since the game was announced.
Me too.
Talking to the developers and just watching their process of making the game and taking suggestions from the community. They wouldn't add my favorite character, but it's fine because he's too powerful and he would break the game anyway. But
right.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's kind of an overview of my history, I guess, with the Turtles.
Yep. Very good. All right, so as far as memories go, we got a lot. I have a lot that I want to talk about. I never got a chance to watch Coming Out of Their Shells tour because I actually remember seeing commercials for it back in the day. And I would see it advertised a lot back in like 1990, 1991. And I asked my mom if we can go. And she said no. And by the time that she ended up making it up to me later on, not for that, but we ended up watching Disney on Ice when I was like 6. So I think I actually got the better deal in the long run.
Honestly, yeah, probably.
So
she probably skipped it for her sanity, let's be honest.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Honestly, and I did, however, watch the entire Coming Out of Their Shells tour on YouTube many years later, and I was like, what is this? Like, what's going, like, the music was great, but everything else about it, like the costumes were absolutely out of this world. But you want to know what's one thing about coming out of their shells that I absolutely remember the most? So the Turtles promoted it by being a guest, but they were being guests on Oprah Winfrey's show.
Yeah.
God.
So here's the thing. What I remember was that like there's a highlight reel of it on YouTube where like you would see the Turtles running. They were being interviewed by like they also had April O'Neil with them. They were interviewed by Oprah, and then like Shredder came out and everybody was booing Shredder, and the way that Shredder was acting, it's like one of those like a heel professional wrestler, like a villain of sorts.
Yeah.
And they just play up the fact that people are booing them and they embrace it, like laughing and all that. That's their mentality. And then then they just talked about interspecies relationships between April and the Turtles and how like they couldn't do it because apparently she couldn't hold her breath long enough to make it work.
God.
It's a wild clip.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
And then then they were asking some kids questions. Like the one that stood out was there was this one kid that actually asked the Turtles, "What's so special about Splitter?" And then Raphael was like, "Well, you know, Splitter's our dad, you know. I mean, what's so special about your dad?" And then, like I watched it and I was like just dying of laughter. Like out of context.
I feel like they let the Turtles like improv.
Yeah.
Like that's the only excuse.
I did went back to watching the whole thing, at least just the portion where they were just asking the kids, the audience questions. When he was like, "What's so special about your dad?" Donatello had to interject and say, "You know your dad is special," but out of context, because they cut the part out, like they just only said like, "What's so special about your dad?" And they just cut that everything else out. And, like just out of context, I just could not stop laughing. It was like, "Oh my god, these turtles destroyed that kid's dad." And
that actor has probably got some father issues.
Yeah.
It makes you want to feel bad for the father, but at the same time, like it's Raphael. Raphael is supposed to be like the rudest turtle, like the asshole turtle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, that's how Raphael
At the same time, it's just like, I don't know how well that rubs off when you're actually like talking to kids.
True.
Do we even know who played them during these? Like, did they just they did it and then went away and hid?
I actually don't even know who they were. I forgot. But yeah,
I know that Cam Clark reprises roles Leo for the tour. So I don't know if he was on set for that Oprah thing. Yeah,
he's like technically uncredited. So it's like I don't think I think he said he did, but no one has ever been able to confirm it.
Yeah, but yeah, based on the YouTube comments I got on my upload of that show, a lot of people say, "Oh, this is one of the few times Cam Clark voiced Leonardo in a non-cartoon role."
So the resource I use is Turtlepedia, which is our big fan wiki for this community, and they do have a cast list, but it's for the stage show. Yeah, and Cam Clark's not on it, but they do address that rumor. So I'm like, oh, I don't know, like, because I don't think this was like, I mean, this obviously wasn't a SAG or AFTRA production back then,
right?
And I think he was a member of the union back then, so I don't know if he could have been doing this. So,
like, I know that back in that time, like, the voice actor for Donatello and also he was the voice actor for Bebop, Barry Gordon, he used to be the president of SAG-AFTRA for a couple of years, so he would not have been on that stage show. But I know for a fact that in terms of other mediums, because there was also this one Christmas Ninja Turtle special that I remember.
Ooh. Yeah.
It was like a sing-along of sorts, and
we wish you would
gotta get a gift for Splinter.
It was cringy in a sense, but it was the type of cringy that, like, you look back on it, it's like, it's just how it was back then. We watched.
I tried to pitch that. I tried to pitch that we would review that every Christmas on our podcast.
Yes.
Like that. I wanted that to be our annual tradition so badly.
The
I need to be on that for a birthday thing for me.
Oh, it's so good.
the one thing I want to bring up as well is that I remember there was some weird like Ninja Turtles PSAs like for anti-drug.
Oh, yeah.
The one that stands
yep.
out. The one that stands out to me was there was these two kids in school, like you can see like lockers and everything in the hallway, and this one guy was trying to egg a little kid on to smoke marijuana, and he was like, "What are you, chicken?" And then you see like footage of the cartoon, like they're talking to the kids who are watching it, how like trying to figure out what to do, like what the kids should be doing, and in the end, he was like, "I'm not a chicken. You're a turkey."
You're a turkey.
Yeah. I actually played that commercial during Double Nintendo a few times. Yeah, that always oh, excuse me.
Yep.
Always gets a great reaction out of the crowd. Like once he says, "I'm not a chicken, you're a turkey," and the whole crowd goes, "Oh."
Yeah, and
that's fun.
And speaking of crossovers, like I know like obviously we have Turtles Forever as well as the two 2012 crossovers that had the 1987 Turtles. But here's a crossover that I'm going to bring up that not a lot of people would mention unless they were from that era. And that's Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, which had Michelangelo in it. It was like they had all these characters from all these networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Yeah, like you had the DuckTales, you had Muppet Babies, you had Alf.
Bugs Bunny,
like,
Alf, yeah.
Bugs Bunny.
Garfield.
This was a loaded crossover. This is around the time of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, so it's like this was
I remember
this was the perfect time to drop this.
It's like I was expecting something amazing. Like what adventures were they going to go on? And they could have done a lot of different things, but what did it ended up being? An anti-drug PSA.
Of course.
And they open it up with George Bush Sr. talking. I think and I think his wife Nancy was as well. I don't remember. Barbara Bush.
Barbara Bush.
Yeah, Barbara Bush. Yes.
Nancy was the one that started with that with Reagan. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Nancy Reagan. Yeah. But yeah, they both opened it up. The whole show. To talk to the kids about like the whole anti-drug thing, and then like they had the show itself, which the fact that they managed to get all these companies to agree to let their characters in there, and it's fun.
Yeah,
I find it ironic that Michelangelo, out of all the four turtles, was in it, considering the fact that honestly, with that incarnation of Michelangelo, I would think that would be the one who would do drugs.
Oh, right?
Yeah, like.
I mean, all these cartoon companies, they got around, like there was rules and regulations where they had to do so many of these PSAs and so forth to get money and to kind of offset that they could basically sell toys to everybody. So them getting together to do that is basically like, all right, we're going to all do this together and just get it over with. And that covers all of us now. We're good to go, you know.
Because that cartoon coincided with the fact that season 4 of Ninja Turtles was like at least half of it. Like the first half was syndication. The second half was premiering on CBS around that time in 1990. Yeah. And the thing is that cartoon was basically just having all of these Saturday morning cartoon characters together, and looking back, it's like it would have been so much better if it wasn't an anti-drug PSA. Though I have to wonder, like, sticking all those cartoon characters, especially the Ninja Turtles, into these PSAs, I wonder how many people actually did the opposite of what they were telling them not to do. But
so in my case, like stuff like that and Dare 100% worked on me. Like I was just afraid of drugs. Like I know a lot of like, you know, anecdotes from, you know, a lot of people my age. It's just like, oh, that just encouraged me to do drugs. But it's just, I don't know, it was just complete opposite for me. It's just like that scared me straight on drugs and just never wanted to do that. Never wanted to do that stuff. Never wanted to drink alcohol. Like there was a period of time where I stopped drinking soda with caffeine in it because I heard that caffeine was a drug, and then I didn't want to do drugs. So it's just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just drinking Sprite from now on.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah.
Took it to
Yeah,
the
but that
extreme.
only lasted like a few months. But yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's like for me, I definitely do not do drugs, and I don't like smoke or anything. I rarely drink, but these cartoons weren't really the reason why like I don't do any of that stuff. It's just the fact that they kept pushing it. Like, oh, they only wanted to stick cartoon characters on there because they would think that we would instantly like agree with everything. But that's just the way it was back then. But
Yeah.
but let's go.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's go back to Ninja Turtles. I just want to say one thing, like a couple things. So I talked about the anti-drug PSA ads, but there's merchandise outside of the toys that I want to bring up. Like there are trading cards that I do remember seeing a lot of, and also snacks. Like for example, the TMNT Hostess pies.
My god!
Like
Those were so freaking good.
They were green, and they had the vanilla pudding inside.
Oh god!
Into the green, yeah.
And it like whenever I see people post about like nostalgic snacks that people want to see come back, that's one of the ones I want to see come back.
Yeah,
That one and Ecto Cooler, man.
I
want Ecto Cooler so bad.
And
yeah. They brought that back when they did the reboot Ghostbusters movie, the 2016 one.
Yeah, they did.
It's the same.
I thought it was good, but I don't know.
It was good. There was also like TMNT cookies that I remember back then. I think there was a cereal, but I never had it.
Yeah,
There was a cereal.
There was a cereal where they had the shapes were nets, like the famous Ninja Turtle nets.
The Ninja Nets.
Yes.
What they're called.
That they always used.
What they should have done, honestly, I was kind of expecting that there would have been like another Ninja Turtle cereal at some point, like when the 2010, like the 2012 show or Rise, because there was also the ice cream, which they still make that. Though I do think that they have, I think they have the Mutant Mayhem versions now. But I remember,
so there is a Mutant Mayhem cereal. Yeah.
Oh, there is.
Cowabunga cinnamon apple. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It is absolutely terrible.
Oof.
Of course, there was mac and cheese.
Yes,
Mac and cheese.
There was the Chef Boyardee pasta, which
Of
came
course.
in 3 different cans.
Yep.
One of them
I
at
always
least
got
had
the
meatballs.
Yep.
Yep.
I always wanted the meatball one.
Famously, though, Dinosaur Dracula, who's fantastic pop culture historian, had a can that he opened
Oh, I saw
just a few years ago, just so we could look at the contents.
Yeah.
But I was going to mention what I always thought was interesting is that like there were 3 cans of the Chef Boyardee pasta. 2 of them used like the cartoon art. One of them had actual like Mirage Comics art, like drawn by, I think it was Peter Laird.
Really?
Or Michael Dooney.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's such a weird thing to see that.
I don't remember that one. These released at the same time?
That's they're within a couple of years of each other, but it's the TMNT versus Shredder pasta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Man.
Another thing that I remember in regards to merch, like they pretty much would do just about anything with Ninja Turtles. Like if you could think it, I think remember like those little slideshows, like where you could view, like, let's say if you're going on a trip but you're not actually there. Viewfinder, yeah. I think they had Ninja Turtle episodes for those. I remember having those like disposable cameras with Ninja Turtles on it when I was a kid. My mom used to use those to take pictures whenever we go out, like on our own family outings. But obviously the main thing that resonates with me more than any other medium for Ninja Turtles outside of the cartoons, video games. Video games. Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, was my first one, although I did play the actual arcade game before I played the NES one. The first one I owned was Hyperstone Heist for Sega Genesis, and then I got the Super Nintendo Tournament Fighters and Turtles in Time, which I remember selling Turtles in Time years ago to a friend for like about like I got it for like I sold it for about maybe like $30, and then 3 years later I bought it for about 15.
Oh, okay.
So still have that copy, and I'm not selling it because Turtles in Time. I used to think Turtles in Time was the best beat 'em up until I played Shredder's Revenge. So good. But Cowabunga Collection is great to have. I never got to own any of the TMNT games from the 2003 series because I will say I watched.
You're better off.
The first,
I've been getting them just to collect them. They're bad.
I was told that
they're
go ahead.
not fun.
Like I heard that the first one was the only one that's good, but anything else after that was not good. And I've tried. I remember back when in Nintendo New York or Nintendo World Store back in 2007 during the Wii era, they had the CGI TMNT movie playable for the Wii and GameCube. And I think they also had the DS version playable as well. I tried the Wii version. Like, I've tried it back then, I didn't like it. And I tried it recently when I did a stream, like streaming like TMNT games in the 2000s last year. And I gotta be very honest, it's not bad. The problem is the Wii controls hold it back. Like, if you play, because the version that I played when I streamed it was actually the GameCube version, and it's actually much better with traditional controls than it is with the motion controls, because the Wii version is not good.
Now, speaking of that time, did you ever mess with their Smash Brothers clone that they did?
Yes. And it's not bad. It's actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's, in my opinion, like probably one of the better Smash clones that's not, obviously not Smash Brothers.
Right.
And although they did put the Ninja Turtles in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls 1 and 2. Like, the first one had Leonardo and Michelangelo. The second one has Donatello and Raphael, but both versions...
And April. Don't leave April out.
Oh, I was going to mention both versions have April. Shredder is in the first game, and Rocksteady is going to be in the second game as DLC.
Ooh.
Like, they confirmed Rocksteady as DLC for the second one.
Okay, you have my interest now.
So... Go ahead.
Sorry. One of the cool things about that era was the first Turtles game, the first NES one, was the first licensed game on the Nintendo Virtual Console.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was an extra 100 Wii points. Yep. I remember because
I remember that too.
Still, it's on my Wii U because I transferred everything over.
Yeah, they did plan to bring the second one over, and it didn't happen because of the Pizza Hut license that was in the game. Although in Cowabunga Collection they did remove the Pizza Hut logo.
Yeah.
Which, thank you Digital Eclipse for doing all that stuff, that entire collection.
Pizza Hut still has a stranglehold over the license with Ninja Turtles. We got Domino's in the first movie, and then after that, Pizza's like, nope, it has to be us from now on.
Yeah.
Which I refuse to believe that any native New Yorker would want either Pizza Hut or Domino's.
I know that always confuses me when I rewatch the first movie. It's just like you're living in the set. Yeah, you're living in New York and you're ordering Domino's.
Yeah, exactly. Like I get it.
They wanted the 30 minutes or less joke, which that's clearly why they did.
No, that works. But it's like when you get to, but I still refuse to believe that any native New Yorker would actively do that.
Yeah, like for me, as much as I like Domino's and Pizza Hut, you can't beat New York City pizza. You can't. No. You just can't.
Now that I've actually had some, it's really good.
Yes.
I've never had any, so someday I would.
Yeah, like it's really good. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's going to change your life.
Yep. So in regards to the other games, I did not. The only 2012 game I played, there was an arcade game made by Raw Thrills, which recently came out on Switch and other platforms. Which I played it. I thought it was all right. Not the greatest thing in the world, but I thought it was all right. Oh, and by the way, that remake of Turtles in Time that was on the 360 and PS3. No.
Oh God.
No.
Yeah.
No.
The less we talk about that, the better.
Well, every port of that game, it was almost like cursed. It could not get a proper port. Every time they hit it inside of a game, they had to change the music, or the graphics were off, or something had to change.
Right. Yeah.
Until the Cowabunga Collection. It's the first time we're like, here's the game back. You can play it and enjoy it.
And it's like for the first arcade game. The only thing that they had to change in Cowabunga Collection was the title screen. They actually used the same theme that they did from the arcade one up, because one of the composers, Chuck Lorre, had like a stranglehold on the rights to the original TMNT theme song. And although I think he might have sold it to Nickelodeon last year when the Fred Wolf series made it over to Nickelodeon and Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I think that would be part and parcel with it. It'd have to be bundled.
Yes.
Yeah, because like Cowabunga Collection and Shredder's Revenge both use new versions of the original TMNT theme song, and like for years Nickelodeon used like cover versions of the original theme song, like in all their social media posts, and they still do occasionally.
Because even like Turtles in Time, it only needed that first few seconds as they blew out of the sewer cover, the manhole cover blew off and they came flying out. You had that few seconds of it, and then they went to original music. But that's all we needed. That was like the call to all of our generation, like, come play this machine.
And
I remember the first time I had seen the machine, it was actually in the old arcade they used to have at Disneyland.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the first time I had ever gotten to play it.
Like for me, like I remember playing a lot of Turtles in Time in the arcade as well as the original, but though I remember when Turtle Mania pretty much died down in the 90s, like the more common beat 'em ups I was seeing was like X-Men or Simpsons and all that stuff, but not as much Ninja Turtles. But as far as Ninja Turtles games go, like I know they also appeared in there were also other Nickelodeon games they appeared in. Like there's the Nickelodeon Kart Racers games. I believe the second one had the 2012 versions and the third one had the 87 versions. Though I do think that like one idea that I had that I wish that they did in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls 1 and 2 is that they would have represented four of the shows. Like they would have represented like 87 for one of the Turtles, 2003, 2012, and Rise. Like have at least one of each to represent, and then like they point at each other. Hey, you guys came from other universes. Let's see which one's the best one. Which, though honestly, the comics I did go back to reading some of them. Like not everything. I've read some of the IDW comics here and there. I collect some of them. I don't have every issue, but I have a pretty good amount. And from what I did read, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. The way they captured the spirit of Ninja Turtles. I felt like they took as many of the existing Turtles mediums, including the original comics, and put it all together. And they showed how much love and care they put into these comics. I thought it was brilliant. Because I thought it was a very good follow-up from the Mirage comics. Like the Mirage comics, I would go back to read like how some of them were and seeing how gritty they were, how violent they were. And I'm like, I remember just being astonished on like, how did this went from like being what they were to being a kid's show? And obviously, I know the answer right now is capitalism, and you got to turn everything into toys, and you got to and they have to have its own show. That's just how it was back in the 80s, and even before that.
The fun thing with the comics, the original run, the first series made no damn sense because Laird and them were doing the comics, but they couldn't do all of it, so they would get friends and other people in the business to come in and do issues and parts of it, so the story was just everywhere. The second part, they kind of finally made a story with it, which was cohesive, but really crazy with a lot of the stuff. So that kind of led to a bunch of different things. But one other thing I wanted to mention about the arcade machine, you were saying you saw more like Simpsons and X-Men. A lot of the Turtles machines, they had kits that you could order to convert to the Simpsons because that came out later. So it may have just been the fact people were converting over to that newer license is why they were harder to find.
Yeah. And what I also remember is that for the movies, I don't remember if I watched the first one in theaters. I think I did, but I don't remember. I know I watched 2 and 3 in theaters. And I've seen the CGI one in theaters when it came out. I watched it with my brother. We had a good time watching it. It was a really good movie. I did rewatch it when it was on Cartoon Network in 2009. Like, it was shortly after Nickelodeon bought the license, the entire IP, but
Well, that's right.
Warner Brothers had the license, like they had the distribution rights to the first 4 Ninja Turtles movies because they owned New Line Cinema for the first 3. Warner Brothers did the 4th one, so I remember watching that. Did not watch either Michael Bay movie, but I did watch Mutant Mayhem last year with friends. And before we watched Mutant Mayhem, what we did was there was this very obscure pizza place that I found in Lower Manhattan in New York City, where the pizzas were like they kind of like the Sicilian slices, but they had like different toppings that, like, for example, they have 4 cheese. They had like different variations. It was more exotic pizza, but when you go inside, they had like an 80s vibe. They even had some Ninja Turtle figures in there too. They knew what they were doing.
Nice.
So the idea was my friends and I, we would go and eat the pizza there, and then like afterwards we were going to go to the movies to watch the Mutant Mayhem, and we watched it. That movie was so good. Like, that movie, like, I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't seen it, but I will say that to me is definitely up there as one of the best Turtles movies. It's still really hard for me to determine if I like this more than the 1990 movie, or if I like the 1990 movie more. I need to rewatch both movies again.
I honestly think Mutant Mayhem is the best one.
I can't, as an 80s, 90s kid, say any of them will be better than the original, because I will proudly wear that nostalgia badge. But damn, I love the one. It was really good. It was up there.
I can distinguish it between Mutant Mayhem is the best one on a technical level, but my favorite is the 1990.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's how I break it.
Like that.
That's how I try to break it down. That way I can be fair and all over.
Yes.
I will admit my bias. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I wear my bias on my sleeve, but I also try to be as objective as I can.
That being said, 2003 series, I actually enjoyed watching it all the way up until like the moment that they actually went into the future. That's when I felt that it was starting. That's when I felt that that series jumped the shark, in my personal opinion. And I watched Turtles Forever, and to be quite honest, I liked it when it came out. Now, to be honest, not so much. The more that I've watched it, the more I've actually realized a multitude of things. I kind of felt that the hate that they were actually spewing towards the 87 series, it kind of felt like it was coming out of spite, because of the fact that Peter Laird does not like the 87 series, because he felt that by then he sold out. He actually admitted that he felt that he sold out.
Right.
And the thing about it was that I felt that when they were trying to team both of them up, it kind of felt a lot more one-sided, when it should be that both teams are actually working together rather than like...
Yeah.
And the one scene that really got to me was when the 87 Turtles were crying, and then they went to the 2003 Raphael, like, it just felt like that's not how that, like, yeah, I know that the 80s series was pretty silly and campy at times, but it also had some moments where the 87 series was pretty serious, especially the last 3 seasons. Like, they changed the dynamic of the show, where they had the Red Sky. It was a lot more serious. They rarely eat pizza. They rarely say cowabunga, if not at all. And they did it because of not only Power Rangers, but also Batman, the animated series, and the X-Men cartoon were pretty popular. So they wanted to have that same energy.
Yeah.
But my thing is that I felt that Turtles Forever could have been a lot better. And doesn't help the fact that because 4Kids is 100% non-union, they could not get the original voice actors at the time, nor could they get the actual music from the show because of the rights holders. So unfortunately, they couldn't get that either. But they were 100% adamant and not acknowledging anything from the Next Mutation at all. Like, there was a scene where they had like multiple universes. Next Mutation was not one of them. Like, I could have
sworn I saw it there.
I did see Turtles in Time on there somewhere, and like saw like the Japanese anime Ninja Turtles. There was a special where they had like these mechs.
Mutando Tatsuo Chojin Den Sensuhen is a fantastic OVA.
I've seen it.
Highly recommend it.
An impressive pull. I'll give you that right now for remembering that name.
There was only there was only 2 episodes of it because it was an OVA, and they were never dubbed in English, so you had to watch it with subtitles, and it was.
There's also a manga sequel.
Oh, really? I did not read
that. And it's loosely connected to the movie. The movie sets up the Super Turtle mutations, which is basically their anime forms. But it's great. I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces of like Lost Turtles media.
So the 2012 series, it actually premiered on my birthday in 2012. It was September 29th.
Oh, wow.
And I've watched it. It was a 2-parter. They kept a whole storyline in which that, from the 80s series, in which that Hamato Yoshi and Master Splinter are the same person rather than 2 completely different characters.
Right.
However, they did keep the backstory from the comics in which that he had a wife named Shang Ten, or Tang Shen. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. And Oroku Saki ended up killing her because he was jealous. And he had a daughter named Miwa who was kidnapped by Oroku Saki, who would become Shredder. And Miwa would become Karai. And what I remember from that show is just seeing the action, like, because at the time, the first 2 seasons, they had Jason Biggs voice Leonardo, but he was fired from the show because he had some sort of a Twitter outburst, which he has since later regretted. But the damage was already done. So they had somebody come in to voice match him for the rest of the season, and then starting from season 3, they replaced him with Seth Green. And they even acknowledged the whole voice change and everything because Leonardo got damaged, so they changed his voice, which explained it, made sense. I thought Seth Green did a really good job. They had Sean Astin from The Lord of the Rings voice Raphael.
Sean Astin from Rudy.
Oh, Rudy, yes. They had Greg Sipes, who was known as Beast, who was Beast Boy in Teen Titans, voiced Michelangelo, and they brought back Rob Paulson, who voiced Raphael in the original show. Now he voiced Donatello, and I thought he did a great job.
Weird.
The show was great.
Yeah, like Rob Paulson, because this is around the time I was starting to get back involved with the Turtles community, and when I was younger, I used to want to be a voice actor. So living in California, all of them are around me, so I got to know Rob, and that was kind of a really big moment in his life. And he's talked about this on his podcast and stuff, like, he had some middling years in the early 2000s, in the mid 2000s. Yeah. And this was like kind of that big upswing where he started like really coming back huge. And he loves it. He talks about how, he's been with this franchise essentially from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he even went on to be the voice director for Rise.
Yes.
Because he's so in love with this franchise. And he talked about it in, I forget what interview it was, but he talked about when he met Greg and Jason Biggs and Sean Astin, he was trying to talk about how big of a legacy this was for them. and telling them that like, hey, this is going to change your life. This is going to change the lives of a lot of people. So be careful with what you do. So yeah. I've always found that funny that like Jason Biggs literally found out and was removed from the show.
Yep, he sure did. And I thought he was all right, but I personally think Seth Green did a much better job, in my personal opinion. And considering the fact that Seth Green actually was like a fan of Ninja Turtles, it definitely helped. But I remember they had the 2 crossovers, like with the 87 show, and the first one, like I was happy with it. Like they did a great job, like getting the 2 teams to work together on an equal ground rather than feeling like one team is better than the other one. Like they did great. Having the 2 different Krangs. And then the second one, I kind of felt that they regressed the 87 Turtles a bit. Still nowhere near, but not in the level that they were in Turtles Forever. But they did, however, since James Avery, who voiced Uncle Phil, who voiced Shredder in the 80s cartoon, he passed away like in late 2013.
Yep.
So they couldn't get him to reprise his role in the crossovers. They got voice actor Kevin Michael Richardson to come in and voice match him, and he did a great job. He sounded a lot like the original Shredder there, and he was already
playing Shredder on that show.
So for him to actually
I always remember watching like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and those scenes where he'd get angry and that Shredder voice would come out and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yes. And it's like, for the longest time, I did not put 2 and 2 together that Uncle Phil was Shredder until much later. Yeah, like, and I was like, that's awesome. And I felt that he and Pat Fraley, Krang, that they played each other off very well. They had really good chemistry together.
Yeah.
And it just worked.
Well, famously, they've said they played them as a married couple. That's why it works so well.
I mean, yeah, that totally checks out.
Yep, I agree.
Yep. I still gotta watch Rise, and I did watch the next mutation. No,
there's nothing to do it,
okay.
Man.
So
I'd say I love it a lot, and if we want to talk about some fun history about it, it pulls so many ideas from the Lost 4th movie they were originally going to do, as well as other ideas that they were originally going to do in the Mirage comics. Yeah. So it's like there's so much Mirage DNA in the next mutation. Like the designs are by Michael Dooney, who's essentially like the 4th original Mirage guy behind Jim Lawson. And it's like it's not a good show. It's very bad, but it's like the things that people hate about it aren't necessarily the worst things. Like people rag on Venus, the girl turtle, all the time.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a lot of it was bandwagoning.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it absolutely a lot of the fandom is bandwagony.
I think for me, my view when it first came out was kind of like how she just kind of showed up. It felt weird, like they were just kind of tacking it on. I think they handled it in subsequent series much better of how her like character was introduced. Like, okay, that makes more sense.
She comes her and the other 5th turtle in the IDW comic, Jenica. Both of those turtles come into the IDW comic, and Jenica's been around for about 5 years now as a turtle. And she was introduced in issue 51 and then didn't become a turtle until issue 95. And she's been a great addition. People responded pretty well to her. I mean, it's the internet and it's comics, so people are always going to hate it,
sadly.
But I mean, I like Jenica. I think she's a fantastic addition to the mythos. I would love to see her adapted into other mediums, but it's always fascinating because Venus and Jenica are both ideas of Kevin Eastman, who he just for years wanted, he's always been a fan of having a female turtle. Peter Laird famously hated her. And that's why Venus, like on the 2003 show, you couldn't even joke about Venus.
Yeah.
What
I
okay.
There is one thing that I just do know about Next Mutation is that didn't they retcon that the turtles were brothers?
So canonically, and this comes up a lot actually. Canonically, the turtles are not. We don't know. We don't know if they're blood related. We don't know anything.
Yeah,
the only
yeah, I just yeah,
because I just remember they're
remember
canonically blood related is Rise.
right.
Yeah,
because I just remember seeing a clip. I think like when I think James Rolfe was reviewing like random live action Ninja Turtles, he brought up the fact that it's just like one of the turtles is actually talking to Venus, like, oh, we're not actually brothers. Yeah, and it's just like it was just such a weird thing. It's like they just want maybe give them an excuse to be horny for their sister.
Exactly.
So outside of that, because they've kind of pushed on the whole, them being different breeds of turtles for some of the later series, which so they can physically be different. And then it's supposed to be family, just like Splinter's obviously not their actual dad; it's a rat.
Yeah,
but it's that found family type thing.
Yeah,
which is what I love, and it's funny. I don't want to spoil Rise for you guys. So, in fact, I kind of did by saying that's the only one where they're blood related. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that is a great story point when you get to it.
Yep.
But yeah, like Next Mutation is the only one to go out of its way to say they're not related. And that's what a lot of people latch on to. Because like even the turtles like species is never really defined outside of like the Mirage comic. Donatello has guesses about what they are. Same thing with the 2012 series.
Yeah.
And then Rise gives them definitive species, where they're all different species of turtles.
Yes.
They're all actually Rise is the only one also besides like the original toy line, which is its own universe, where they have different ages.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
some of them you can kind of make out what type of turtle they're based on just because of some of their physical characteristics, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in the third movie, Raph jokes that he's a snapping turtle because he has a beak. Like, but it's not confirmed. But because in the first movie, we see red-eared sliders, which are a very common pet turtle.
Right. Well, in the original animated, like the first short series they did before the first full season, they drew them with a slight beaking to their face, not the really super rounded that the cartoon had, because they were supposed to have those features kind of in there.
Which is a very funny thing because the first season is animated by Toei, who's very famous Japanese animation
for that. Like, good God,
well, that's the thing. They brought their A game for certain episodes because you get to the third episode and it's very bad. And I have like 3 screenshots that I have saved on my phone, and I'm like, because the whole episode looks like this.
Yeah, because I remember like the best looking episodes from that season, since it was only 5 episodes, were the first 2 episodes and the last one. The third and the fourth, not so much, especially 3.
Yeah.
3 is it's a thing about mousers, and it's the episode that introduces Baxter Stockman.
Yes.
And it's a very good episode, but everything is off model. Everything is just like everything is ugly. Like there's a lot of choices being made here, but because you could tell that they're putting all their effort in the first episode and the season finale, which like is great. It did because those episodes definitely hold up.
Yeah.
But that's what I always find funny is that like when everybody says like, oh, the first season is so beautifully animated, it's like, well, like 80% of it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I'm a big proponent of like, if you're gonna love the Turtles, we can't pretend that it's always good.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you've got to accept the flaws.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of those cartoons, they put the money in and they put the work in for the first few episodes because they know if we can sell this show, then we'll have the license, we'll have the contract to do the rest of the season where once we're under contract, we can do it like we normally do. And then they'll kind of maybe up at the end a little bit so we can work on the second season if they can. Like it's business. That's how they do it.
And the intro. The intro
the intro is great.
It looked like anime when you look back. It looked like an anime.
It technically is.
Yeah,
it's because Toei did it.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, because you're right, because like it was such a flash in the pan, like, oh my god, this is taking off, and like the toy line was starting to come out, because that was the thing. The toy line is from 1988, and the show is 87.
Yeah,
and that was specifically because Playmates did not want to release the toys before the show. They're like, you have to do a show, which is why the first season's only 5 episodes, and everything exploded. So then we have a pretty short second season. It's like 16 episodes.
Yeah.
And then season 3 is 45 episodes. And then season 4 is another 40 episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people fall off of the show. And it's like because on our show, we would review 3 episodes at a time. Mm-hmm. And then it would be sometimes in those 3 episodes, 2 of them would be the same plot. And it's like, that's how fast these shows were coming out.
They're trying
it's
to
like
get
they were just recycling plots week to week.
Yeah, they're trying to get to the magical syndication number. And at that point, they can just print money as they air it in different places.
And also the fact that some of these episodes were actually made with different animation companies.
They would farm it out all the time.
Yep.
There's in doing my research for that, there was specifically, I think it was a German company, or they're from Denmark. I can't remember. It's somewhere in Europe, and it's like I hadn't heard of this company, and they produced the worst looking episodes, even worse than that bad Toei one.
Yes. But yeah, like those were basically my memories. Like I shared lots of memories with a lot of people. I've actually met there was a YouTuber that I met who did a lot of content creation. I don't know if they still do it. She was on TV for having like a lot of Ninja Turtle merch.
You're talking about Michelle.
Yeah, Cowabunga Corner. I used to watch
You're talking about Michelle Ivy.
Yes, I know her. She's great.
She is fantastic. I finally got the chance to meet her last year at Comic-Con.
I met her at New York Comic Con in 2011 because I remember because I know some other people who knew like multiple people part of like the turtle communities, and I just seeing how much people actually love Ninja Turtles just made me really happy. And especially like in 2022 when Shredder's Revenge released, as well as the Cowabunga collection, I was riding high during that time. I was riding high. Just how like even my friends who weren't like the biggest Ninja Turtles fans that are into it, and those that already were loving everything that we're getting right now.
Well, it was a dream come true.
And it followed up into this year, like last year, with the movie, as well as the DLC for Shredder's Revenge. Mm-hmm. And now it's like 40 years of Turtles, but those are my memories. So I changed up the third talking point so that we talk about the characters, because we talked about like a lot of the mediums. Let's talk about the characters. 3 characters at most. Curt, we're starting with you. Your favorite characters.
Favorite characters. So, yeah. I mean, Michelangelo would definitely have to be up there. I mean, I feel like that Michelangelo was a lot of people's favorite characters for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just think he's a party dude. He's just seems like the most fun to just hang out with, and I always just enjoyed his antics in the show and just his crazy pizza recipes and things like that. I don't know if they were really his recipes, just stuff he liked.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of just because I feel like I never really thought about Ninja Turtles in terms of having favorite characters other than Michelangelo. I mean, I've started having more of a fondness of Donatello, especially in the video games, because I feel like, you know, when I realize, oh, this bow staff has really big range, and it's just like it makes it way more fun to play when I realize, oh, I can actually like not have to just be in danger the entire time by playing with Michelangelo all the time. But yeah, that's kind of a hard thing to. Yeah, Michelangelo, I definitely liked. Let's see. Yeah, I might have to think about that a little more, because yeah, I never really gave that much thought.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, because like I just liked the whole show. I liked the whole cast. Yeah, it's just an. Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit more, honestly.
All right, we'll come back to you on that.
Yeah.
Zen.
So for the turtles themselves, it has to be Donatello.
Yes.
Because I'm an engineer. That was always the one I've always liked because he was the nerdy, scientific one, thinking through everything. Also didn't hurt that in all the video games, he was just the character to use, which was great. As for other characters in the show, Baxter Stockman was always a favorite of mine.
Yep.
Which he has always changed so much from his original comic book view to then how he was made out to be in the cartoon. And then, of course, when they started in the live action films, they actually became more accurate to the comics, but everyone was complaining, thinking like, oh, why'd you make him black? And I was like, yeah, he originally was, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he was only white in the cartoon.
Yep.
He was. It was a weird animation thing when they chose to do it. Of course, he became a fly, so who cared?
Yeah.
And the last one, if I have to choose three, it makes it really hard. It'd have to be Metalhead. I was always a fan of all the different variations of Metal. It was either him or Slash. I always loved Slash, but Metalhead, that's one of my favorite toys. I remember you could see the brain inside there. You could put light through it and his eyes would light up. You could swap his hands out. I still have that original toy. But he's consistently gotten fun variations in the cartoons and games and comics over the years. Like he keeps coming back in great new ways.
He's coming back in the new Tales of the TMNT cartoon.
I know, I can't wait. another Metalhead to add to my collection. So that's my top three, I think.
All right. Rocketeer?
So I have it broken down by series.
Ooh.
Because each version changes just enough that they all kind of offer something differently. Like I can't just say I like Donatello because 2003 Donatello is very different from Rise Donatello. Like, so my overall top three characters is Rise Raphael. Mm-hmm. I had never been a fan of Raphael. Like he's fine. I like the 2012 version a lot. I think Sean Astin is perfect in that role. But that's something about
really big, right?
No, Rise, yeah, because he actually is a snapping turtle in Rise. But what I love about him in that version is how I mentioned earlier, Rise gave them different ages. Raph is the oldest this time, which is why he's the leader. And as you watch the show, like because everyone was mad that he was the leader, and fans are mad that he's the leader.
Yeah,
because that changes everything. But the show actually does explain it, and by the finale, you really understand why he's the leader. Mm-hmm. And it's because he's the older brother, and he feels that he has to protect his smaller, younger brothers.
Right.
And because they're so immature, and he can't he's bad at being a leader, but it's that love of his brothers that creates the hot-headedness that we know Raph usually is.
Right.
And so it's like that, giving him that extra angle, that new twist on something we already know. Like it just, plus I'm an older brother, so it's like that really spoke to me, which is why I really love that version of Raph.
I really need to watch.
Flip side, yeah, and it's like the voice acting is great. It's Owen Benson Miller, just fantastic version of Raphael. My other favorite would be 2003 Baxter Stockman, specifically because he's just so petty and angry and just stupid. Like he's the smartest man in the room, but he's so petty and upset because no one will acknowledge it.
Yep.
And like we're watching the 2003 show right now on our podcast, and I'm learning to love him, and it's becoming like that voice is the voice I hear when I read Baxter Stockman and IDW, because it's just like he's so perfect.
Nice.
Yep.
And then I mentioned him earlier, but Hokum Hair is just a very fun. He's just a fun, dumb character, and as like I think he perfectly encapsulates what a guest character in Turtles can be.
Yes.
Because it's like he just randomly shows up. He's the plot of an episode. He helps the Turtles out in the next episode, and then he's gone. But it's like he just encapsulates how wacky the 87 series can be.
Yes.
And that's why I have him on that pedestal. He's not a good character. He's dumb, and it's like nobody but me would pick him as their favorite character from that. But it's like I just for some reason I just gravitate towards him.
Yeah.
I had to look just to see if he had a toy ever made, and the closest is Rocksteady in a bunny suit. So
I know, and those are from from the Easter episode, because that's where Bebop and Rocksteady crashed the Channel 6 Easter party and used the fear rays on them. So it's like I'm so close to having a Hokum Hair figure. And at this past WonderCon in Anaheim, I met Trevor, who's in charge of the TMNT line at NECA, and I, to his face, let him know that this is my most anticipated figure in the toy line.
Yes.
I'm actually shocked because I feel like they just would make a Ninja Turtle toy about anything. Just like, even if it didn't even appear in the show, it's just it's just like, I'm surprised it just never did that.
The only thing that ever went deeper into toys for its series would be Star Wars. You got Star Wars, and then Ninja Turtles is the close second.
Yep.
And so I bring that up earlier. The toy line I've always considered to be a separate universe than the animated show. And it's mostly because the designs are always so different. Like you can't hold up the Donatello from the 1988 figures and be like, this is the one from the show. And even like, remember action figure file cards on the back?
Oh yes.
Like, for G.I. Joes famously, like, but the Turtles ones, Transformers, like how they had their stats and stuff. The Turtles ones all gave them different ages and birthplaces. And so I was like, oh, okay, like this is a different universe. And like technically in that universe, I think Mikey's either the oldest or the second oldest. No, Leo's 16, Mikey's 15 and a half, and then Donnie and Raph are 15.
Yeah.
And
they just had staff writers like, hey, fill this out, add some stuff, we'll get the toys out there,
Right. Yeah. Like they're not like it's not really canon to anything, because it's like they're jokey birthplaces, like Pete's pet shop in Chesapeake Bay. Like they're gags, but it's like they put so much thought into it that's why I like in my head I treat it as a separate universe. Also, like specifically, like the designs are all different. One of my favorite books I bought is it's from Varner Studios, who did a lot of those original designs for the Playmates line. And it's just all these original sketches, and they're just so wildly different from the TV show. That's why I was like, I have to give this its own recognition.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Did you think of any other characters, Curt?
Yeah, honestly, I thought about it, I really do like Krang I feel like he was just, when we were just reminiscing about like how Shredder and Krang were just written as an old married couple, I started thinking about it. I was like, yeah, you know what? Krang was really entertaining. I really did like Krang a lot. Krang, so I was like, Krang, and I want to say, out of Rocksteady or Bebop, it's hard to say because I always
They're
just
a
think of
duo.
them as a pair. Yeah, they're a duo.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah,
you
I
can't
can't
really separate
separate
them.
You can.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? That's
I
what
have to
I'm gonna bump Hokum Hair out because that was he's a S tier character. I can't get rid of him from the list. So to make it fair, I have to move him out. Bebop and Rocksteady, but the Out of the Shadows 2016 movie versions.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So basically, one is professional wrestler Sheamus, and the other one is he was Uncle Ruckus in the Boondocks.
They
Mhm.
were absolutely perfect in that film. That's part of why I'm like, that's a live action cartoon. That's what
I
they get
love
right
them
about that.
so much.
Yep. Best characters, or my favorites at least. Donatello's my favorite, although growing up, Michelangelo was my favorite. But in terms of the non-turtles, let's see. Casey Jones is definitely up there for me. Usagi Yojimbo, even though he is actually a character from his own comic that happens to guest star in multiple Ninja Turtle mediums.
Yep.
I do like Usagi Yojimbo. And the other character that I want to bring up that not many people seem to want to bring up at all. I'm actually a fan of like I like Mondo Gecko. I like the Mutanimals. But I think people will bring his character up anyway. Slash. I love Slash.
Yeah,
Slash
that's
is
why
great.
I
I
have
was
a
thinking
I
to
have
mention him
a,
earlier.
I have a NECA figure right over there. It's based off the TMNT Adventures comics.
Yeah, I have that one too right behind me.
And I also have a letterhead from which is based off the Turtles in Time. Like, as a friend of mine, like one of my best friends gave that to me, both of them to me at the same time for my birthday a couple of years ago.
I still have my original Slash.
Did Slash ever show up in the cartoon?
Yes.
So he did,
sometimes.
but it was a very different version than, than the one from
because
TMNT Adventures.
the only reference I have for Slash is from Turtles in Time.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
the most annoying boss in the game. Yeah.
He was a bad guy in Manhattan Project, which you said you hadn't played, but that is my favorite of the trilogy.
Yeah. Let's see. So the one thing I will say as well is that in terms of turtle characters in general, there have been some very obscure characters. Like I know that there was this character named Renette who happens to be like a time traveler. And I know in the 2012 series she had a thing for Michelangelo, but I don't know about the other mediums. I don't remember. She was not in the 87 cartoon at all. And neither was Karai, although I would not be shocked that if for whatever reason Nickelodeon decided to continue on with the 80s cartoon, then they'll probably put some characters that weren't in the show in there, like Karai, or putting in like they end up having like another Baxter Stockman in the show, like, and just call the Baxter that's already in there Superfly or something. They could just do so many different things, but Turtles have so many different characters from all over the different mediums.
There's one other weird one I'd like to at least mention. Do you guys remember the Fugitoid?
Yes, the Fugitoid.
Absolutely.
Because that was actually the first comic they were trying to sell and they couldn't get it sold. And when Ninja Turtles finally took off, they were like, we worked on this. Just put it in Ninja Turtles. There, we've made it. We've put our character out finally.
Yeah.
He actually predates Turtles, just kind of got thrown in there just to at least get him out there.
Yes.
Fugitoid is a really cool, like, little bit. It's just a one issue, one shot, but it's like that technically is like predates the Turtles.
Yeah, they couldn't manage to sell him. So they just kind of added, like, all right, we can at least get him in there, and that way we can get him into a comic. And then he showed up in the cartoon and kind of went from there.
Yeah. So before we do the community questions, I want to ask everybody here, how much has the Turtles meant to all of us? Like, so Zen, we'll start with you. How much has Ninja Turtles meant to you?
A lot growing up. It's kind of, even to this day, it's one of my favorite series that I've always enjoyed. We've got, this nice statue set that's in my bedroom of all four turtles from the cartoon, as well as Rocksteady Bebop, the full-size Krang with his body, and Shredder. My wife always loved them, so we talk about those and kind of joke about it. But as a series itself, it's been one of those that to be as corny as I can be, it's always managed to mutate into new forms and kind of change into new things.
Yes.
And there's some I didn't really connect to or like that much, but I've still managed to come back and get to it. Now I've got my children into it. You know, my daughter absolutely loved the most recent Ninja Turtles movie and got into that. So it's been fantastic. And I love the fact that I can pass it on to my kids and still talk to my friends and do stuff like this about it.
Yep.
You know.
All right. Very good. Rocketeer, your turn.
For the Turtles, like I've met so many cool people. They say you never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
But it's like the Turtles were my heroes, and I've met the entire voice cast. I've met several of the voice casts. Like one of my highlights is getting to interview Tom Waltz, who wrote the first 100 issues of the IDW run, and like really in The Last Ronin, which is we haven't even mentioned yet. Like that is kind of the new, more mature version of the Turtles that Nick is pushing out towards for the fandom.
Yep.
And like just it's if you ask me like 10 years ago or before the 2012 show, like would I be this involved in the Turtles community? You know, granted, like I just do a weekly podcast, but it's like I'm constantly learning more and then like getting to talk to people like creatives in this community. And like I even helped consult on something that I can't talk about. Like it's so cool that like just this franchise is just it's so malleable and there's something in it for everybody. And it's like my wife doesn't like Rise, which is my favorite version. But it's like we both like the 2012 version, so it's like there's something in here, for anyone.
Yeah,
and that's what means so much to me about this, is that like if you don't like a particular version, you can check out the next one. And it's just all the friends that I've made along the way. My co-hosts that I talk to every week, Spencer, Keith, and Cody. I don't know if Cody's in the chat right now. But like these guys became my best friends. Like I talk to them every week. I talk to them every day. Yep. You know, more than my physical best friends I see. So it's like this franchise gave me a lot of cool stuff, and I'm always thankful for it.
And I'm glad to hear that. That's absolutely amazing. Curt, your turn.
So Ninja Turtles has always just been kind of in my mind for as long as I can remember, even during those times where I just wasn't watching the cartoon at all, or just completely just forgot it was even still airing. But excuse me. But even when I wasn't watching the show, I was still just had a fondness for those video games. I would just always like play Turtles in Time like multiple times a year. I'd still, try and watch the movies every now and again during that time, like in between like forgetting the show existed and the 2003 show. Like Ninja Turtles was always just in my mind in some form, in my life somehow, just always had a fondness for it. And I still, still to this day, excuse me, even if I haven't fully watched the more recent shows, like, again, I've always meant to, but yeah, after watching Mutant Mayhem, that was like, okay, yeah, I'm still into this. Ninja Turtles are still freaking cool as hell.
Yep.
So, yeah, so to me, it's just like that. It's something that was always like part of my memories just growing up. Just as soon as I was able to retain memories, it was always Nickelodeon, Pee-wee's Playhouse, Ninja Turtles. I feel like were some of my earliest memories. And I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. Let me I care. There we go. All right, so yeah, it's just something that's just always been a part of my life. Even if it was just a very little part or just a major part, it's always something that I feel like was, just something very, very special.
Yes. So Ninja Turtles for me meant a lot for the simple fact that it's been something I've been into since I was like two going on three, and the fact that it's always been a part of my life in one way or another. I cannot be more like happy to just ever be a fan. I've met so many people because of Turtles. I remember just how seeing how going into school and people would talk about how much they love the Turtles. There's always been some fandoms that come and go. There's been some people who were interested in some stuff. Interests would come and go. But for me, Turtles was always very high up in terms of what I liked. I love the first movie just as much as I enjoy watching the original Star Wars trilogy. I loved it just as much as I was watching the Back to the Future trilogy. Or like a lot of the great movies that came out in the 80s, 90s, even 2000s. It still holds up. Holds up very well. And how like whenever I played the games, always reminiscing on like which ones I love the best, like Turtles in Time, Shredder's Revenge, like being one of the more recent games. And how like I feel like this decade we're getting like a much better wave of turtle video games in terms of quality. There's been a lot better because like the 2010s was kind of like not really that great, but now like we're getting so much better games, and we're gonna be getting more. We're gonna be getting like a roguelike style game coming this year to everything. There's gonna be a Last Ronin game coming out, I think, next year or something, or the year after.
I hope that actually does show up too.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that
Stay tuned for Comic-Con.
yes, definitely stay tuned for Comic-Con. But yeah, like I'm looking forward to seeing like where this franchise goes. Like 40 years. I will say I never got to meet Kevin Eastman. I have met Peter Laird, and
Ooh.
he wasn't really the greatest with me. Like he was, it's like he was just there at New York Comic Con in 2009. Like I did get a picture with him, but he was kind of a little bit rude to me. But maybe,
So
Probably worn on that man over decades.
I would say 2009 is a hard year for Peter because that was the 25th anniversary.
yeah,
And he was done. He was so done at that point.
yeah. At the time, I didn't know it because like I had this was months before he sold the series to Nickelodeon, which that took me off guard. Like I did not think that would have ever happened, and I think 4Kids wanted to keep going with the 2003 series, but then when the rights went to Viacom to Nickelodeon, like they pretty much had to stop.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It was getting so much of a burden on him, almost like health wise, like it was just wearing him down. That might have been just the best decision, just to be like, all right, I think you guys can do the stewardship of it. I'm just gonna cash my chips and I'm out. Like he still has say in some of the stuff, but he's
like,
just kind of
he's just an old man that wanted to make comics. He didn't want to run a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Like,
right.
And so we're in volume 4 right now in our on our because we alternate between like the cartoon and the comics week to week. So we're just about done with volume 4, which was the last thing that he's done for TMNT as a whole.
Yes.
And seeing where he started volume 4 in 2001 and where we are in the comic right now in 2009, it's such a weird shift in like his attitude towards the franchise and everything. And so you just he's responding to people in the letters column and he's just done. And at that point he was doing one issue a year. Like we read issues 28, 29 and 30, and 28 came out in 2006 and 30 came out in 2009.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that there was a point where he and Kevin Eastman had a falling out, and then they eventually made up. But around the time that they made up was around the time that Netflix had a show called like The Toys That Made Us, and they had a Ninja Turtles episode, and they both were a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at the end of it, it's just really the lasting impact of how like every generation has the Ninja Turtles series, and then now like the current generation is about to get a new one with they actually call it Tales of the TMNT, even though that's what they call the last season of the 2012 series, because Mutant Mayhem it's Mutant Mayhem continuing on. So we'll see how that's gonna go, and what other movies, what other media like video games and other comics that they're gonna be doing. I'm looking forward to seeing just how Turtles is gonna be going from here on out, and as a lifelong fan, I couldn't be any more happier with how things are now.
Same.
So now let's get to the community questions. The first one is from Zykrul. Which cartoon era did you enjoy the most or least in terms of art, story, lore, character personality development, etc.? If I had to pick one, the 2012 series in terms of where they went, I felt that they had a really good amount of storytelling with each of the seasons. Though the last season they did something different because after the main story arc ended, they decided to go ahead and do like completely different stories that were multi-parts, where they had like doing different things. Like there was also one, they had the second crossover with the 87 series, but there was also one where it was a more like post-apocalyptic future, and it's like a what if this happened, and then the turtles look completely different, like they were completely mutated. I believe that was originally supposed to be the finale, but Nickelodeon was like, we don't like this as a finale. Use the second 87 crossover as the finale. And that's what they did. But the characters, they had their own spin. Instead of just being like direct adaptations, they just like, oh, we're going to give you your own thing. Like Bebop and Rocksteady were completely different, and we're actually a lot more competent this time around. I like them. I like what they did with them. Shredder was definitely pretty deadly, like a lot more threatening than like most other mediums. I'd say that the 2003 series comes close in terms of the cartoons, but and they decided that instead of April and Casey being adults, they were teenagers. They wanted to make them teenagers just like the turtles themselves, and I felt that actually worked. So I enjoyed it the most in terms of what they did with the story, in terms of what they did with the characters, character development, and also like the small little things that they added, like Raphael raising a pet dragon. I thought that was cool. So that's my answer. 2012.
Yeah, I would probably like again, I've only really fully seen oh god, I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Go on.
All right, sorry. All right. Yeah, just seeing the 87 and 2003 show. I mean, I really like both for different reasons. Yeah, the 2003 show definitely had some really cool story moments but I do feel like sometimes the tone was like not always consistent. Like sometimes I wanted to be goofy and sometimes I wanted to be serious, and it's just like, and sometimes the writing would just like conflict with each other in certain episodes. But I did like the high points of that 2003 series were like high points. So and you know, I also have the benefit of being able to retain memories of those episodes. So but yeah, even watching the old 87 show, I was actually kind of surprised at, you know, how well some of that storytelling was. And, you know, going back to when you were talking about Turtles Forever, I do feel like, yeah, there was some injustices done to that 87 show where they're just playing off just like, oh, stupid, goofy, whatever. But it's just like, no, the 87 show had its really good storytelling moments too. I mean, it was a little goofier, but it wasn't like completely goofy, you know. But yeah, so it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but yeah, I would say the 2003 show definitely stuck with me more.
Yep.
All right. So for me, I would have to just clearly it have to be the 87 series. That's the one I grew up on. I know it's campy, but I'm perfectly fine with that, because if anytime anyone says Ninja Turtles, no matter what we're talking about, that is the first thing that comes to mind. Is that set of turtles, that cartoon, that theme song, everything around it was such a big part of me growing up that I don't think I could. I mean, I can enjoy the other ones, but that is the one that is attached to me the most. Yep. That will always be referenced to it. So, I mean, that's going to have to be the one for me.
Yep.
If I had to introduce someone to Turtles for the first time and they weren't familiar with it,
right,
I would introduce them to the 2012 show.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Same.
My favorite, though, I've said it a couple times, Rise, 100%. They swung for the fences. They wanted to do something different. It was a reinvention of old tropes, changing things around with the promise of kind of getting to where we're used to. It's the rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's their beginnings. And for a show that kind of had so much promise, there's so much executive meddling and other stuff that kind of killed a lot of that for that show. But when you really dive into it, like, there's a lot of like really neat lore and twists on certain things that we're used to. And I guess like a lot of it lives in my headcanon, and a lot of just things I've read and things, talking to Andy Suriano, who created with the series with Ant Ward. They had so many neat ideas, and that just are really never going to see the light of day. So I love Rise in the sense that it's kind of a tragic, will we ever see the end of this? And for the 40th anniversary comic special that's coming out soon, Andy came back to do a small Rise story set in the future of the movie that came out on Netflix a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. But yeah, just something about Rise. Like,
you okay? You're cutting out. Rocketeer, you good?
All right, sorry about that.
It's fine. You can continue. You can continue.
But like I was saying, like I don't know where it cut off on me.
Because you were talking about like the Rise characters, and also the last major thing you talked about before you got cut off was the comic and how like it's set in the future.
Yes.
And so like it and like I said, it's kind of that promise and like of there is a huge world here, and they had so many cool ideas, and it's just sad that we'll never see it. But it's like something about the way the art community kind of came around. Also, like there was a lot of new Turtles fans and new like animation experts like really loved this show. So there's a lot of love for Rise in a different community than the typical Turtles fandom, which is funny now because it's like, they were the ones who were kind of dumped on by, older fans. And now they're kind of doing it to the Mutant Mayhem kids. And it's like, let's not be cow boomers, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
I haven't heard before, and I don't know if I like it.
I can't claim credit for it, but I have been pushing that one for years. So that's kind of our G1ers.
Come on.
Hey, I'm just saying, cow boomers.
There's a whole Transformers discussion here.
I'm a very casual Transformers fan. My favorite series is animated.
That's an underratedly good show.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like there's a through line from animated to Rise. So
really,
like some of the people who worked on that worked on Rise too.
Okay, that's your biggest selling point to me right now to get me to watch that sooner.
It's like Rise is if you're an anime fan, it's basically a Studio Trigger version of Turtles.
Interesting.
And like where it's just this kind of hyperkinetic, high energy, jokes a second kind of show.
Yeah.
And then it's 11 minutes, so it's like the Adventure Time format, where there's slice of life episodes and then like really big lore dumps.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Let's see.
And so,
Go ahead.
like I said, if you can kind of get through all of it, the show really kicks into gear by episode 8. But at that point, you're really only like an hour and a half into the show anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yep. Let's see. So the next question is from Professor Icepick. What are your favorite and least favorite iterations of each of the main 4 turtles? So basically he's asking about the turtles themselves. Like the I'm gonna pick one of each. So for like one favorite, one least favorite. Favorite Leonardo for me is probably the 2012 series. Least favorite Leonardo, the one from like I'm just gonna say like the one from that special for like the Christmas special, that one.
okay.
Donatello. Okay, I'll make it so that all my least favorites are from that special. Favorite, let's see.
Does the Christmas special count though? Because they're all practically the same character.
Then
Yeah.
all right. Let's see. Donatello, favorite one, I'm gonna go with 2003 or the 1987 one. I'm probably gonna go 2003. Least favorite, probably the movie one after the first movie, because he kind of regressed in my personal opinion. Like I'm talking about like the live action movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the Donatello and that regressed after the first. Like even though in the third movie they brought Corey Feldman back, he just wasn't the same. Raphael, favorite is 2012. Least favorite is going to be that's a tough one. Probably the same thing with Donatello, the movie version after the first movie. Like the second and third movie did not really do Donatello that well. I mean, like Raphael that well either. Michelangelo favorites. Favorite is the movie one actually. Like the movie one's my favorite Michelangelo. Least favorites. Least favorite is actually the 2003 one. Like he was kind of a wise guy, but the way that that he was portrayed is just the fact that it's the same voice actor as Joey Wheeler from Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm like, I can't take that out of my head. So yeah. Yeah. That's mine. It's actually pretty hard for me to pick this one.
Yeah. So for me, I know it's kind of a blanket statement. My least favorite for all of them is going to be the live action series, just because that never really, I'm not saying it's terrible, but it never clicked with me. I never really liked that. I think it may have been an age difference thing.
Yeah.
Because I was coming out of the animated series and that was more of like my little brother's age, and it just never clicked with me. Though after that, I was enjoying stuff and kind of looking into it. But for favorites, Shell, I'm right there with you with Michelangelo from the movie being the best one. I can always just remember, oh, fellow Chucker, eh?
Yep.
Like just that always stuck with me. And Wise Man says never pay full price for late pizza.
Yep.
For Leonardo, it would have to be the version from TMNT.
Yes.
Because I liked the kind of overbearing attitude he had from that, because he was having to try and learn better to be a leader and having that responsibility and pushing on it, which, you're making it sound like that might be Raphael's thing from Rise. So that'd be cool.
Yeah.
For Donatello, that's probably the tougher one, but I would probably do the 2012 series, the CG one from Nickelodeon. Cause just the gap in the teeth, the glass, like the way they made him look was just so much like how kind of Donatello was. He was awkwardly taller, and I really liked that version of him. And then for Raphael, I'd have to go back to TMNT because I liked, like, it was between that and the movie, but I like the version where he's trying to be his own nighttime superhero with the armor and stuff, and just it seems like that's the crap he would try and do. Like, oh, we're not doing enough, I'm gonna go do more. And it's just so bullheaded about it. And it gets him in so much trouble, but it works out how I think best fits his hot-headedness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
I honestly like I said, I haven't really seen the last two shows, and even though I have such fond memories of the '87 show and the movies and the 2003 show. If I'm completely honest, I really like the interpretations from Mutant Mayhem. I really like what they did in Mutant Mayhem. It gave them all just distinct personalities, and Leonardo not just being like, default personality leader or whatever. Like, he had his own issues going on and stuff like that too, of trying to be a leader and things like that. So, and I just honestly think they just had amazing chemistry with one another, and I feel like
actually kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they actually act like teenagers. Yeah,
the first time.
Yeah,
yeah, they actually act like teenagers instead of just like slightly lame adults.
Yep.
Oh,
Like I tell people all the time, like, one of the big criticisms for Mutant Mayhem was like, they sound like prepubescent, and I'm like, no, this is what actual teenagers sound like. You're just used to 30, 40-year-olds playing the Turtles for
my kids,
the last 40 years.
I mean, and also like, back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of teenagers were played by, people in their 20s. And it's just, we just accepted that for some reason. But yeah, it's just like, I can't really think of anything where it's just like an interpretation of a character I didn't really like in terms of all the media I've watched of Ninja Turtles. It's just like they've always had their strengths, and I never really thought like, I don't like what they did with this one in either the '87 or 2003 series. But maybe that'll change once I finally try and watch the other shows. But yeah.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? No, I do have an answer. Raphael in the first Ninja Turtles game.
Yeah,
because his weapon sucks.
That's your least one. Yeah, his weapon sucks.
nicely animated, but useless.
Yeah,
I've always liked the sound it makes. That little pew.
Yeah.
That I love that. But yeah,
but it just did nothing.
He's definitely the only character where you're like, I've killed all three other turtles in this last one.
I would use him to test an area, so I would know he would die, and I would just move on with someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Like that one sewer where it has like the little like spinny invincibility attack. You would run through that with Raphael.
Yep.
For me, I mentioned it earlier. Rise Raphael, peak Raphael for me. Least favorite Raphael is the 2003 version. Just cannot stand him. He's too old. He's too like just kind of angry all the time. But it's like it never feels like he has a legitimate reason to be angry. He's just kind of angry because that's his character. And it's like there's no pathos to it. There's no like reason for him to be so hot-headed because like everyone like Mikey annoys him, but it's like okay, cool. But yeah, I just for some reason cannot stand him. Favorite Donatello is IDW Donatello. Because they just like he just goes through it. Can we talk about spoilers for the comic, or is anyone going to read it? Which
I've heard what happened, so I know that.
Yeah, that was spoiled for me, and my comic book store did not set aside that issue for me, even though I had my poll set up. So it took me so long to get that issue. I was very mad. I meant to mention it earlier. If you have not read the IDW series, we are going into the next volume of it, which is IDW Volume 2, technically. Volume 6 overall for Turtles. Humble Bundle has every TMNT collection from IDW, which is every issue of the run and every spinoff in chronological order. The best way to catch up on it. It's $18 right now. If you want to get everything, you can donate more to charity. It supports the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Also comes with The Last Ronin. So highly recommend that. There's 12 more days of this bundle on Humble Bundle. You can also read pretty much all of IDW's Turtles books and more if you have a Comixology Unlimited app subscription.
Yeah.
It was like $5 a month.
Okay.
So, that's for everybody who wants to catch up. Who did I decide? Did Raphael? Did Donatello? Least favorite Donatello. It pains me, but the 2012 version. I love Rob Paulson. I really, for the most part, do like this Donatello, but I think his writing swings too rapidly, where he's very cringy, stalkery guy to April.
Yeah.
A little too much.
Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable. And that's why I like, generally I like Donatello's overall. But yeah, for some reason, like it's only when I keep getting reminded of that specifically. That's right. That's why I'm like, I gotta dial it back.
Yeah, to be honest, I personally think that they should have scaled it back after, I think, maybe the first or maybe the second season. At least make him take the hints, and then he would have stopped and then realized that, like, no, I should not be doing this. Like
the writing for him is kind of what I said. Like it swings too rapidly because there are sometimes where he does acknowledge it, then he's right back to being in love with her again, and then the writing for her is really inconsistent as well because there's a lot of times where she tells him no, and then in some episodes she leads him on.
Yeah,
and it's very it's forcing this love triangle that nobody really wants, and it's just uncomfortable for everybody.
Yeah,
it's a whole teenage awkward love thing, trying.
Yeah, which like I get, and then when Casey shows up, like then it's like, okay, Donatello has a rival, but it's like he doesn't really because April has said she doesn't like him. Right. So it's like it's just not a fan of that. Favorite Mikey is the 2012 Mikey. Like Greg Sipes is the guy who Kevin Eastman even says, this is who I hear when I think of Michelangelo. Like he's just that perfect. He's just like, just the perfect kind of go with the flow, just here to have a good time character. He's not dumb. He is dumb, but he's not stupid. And it's like, he's very good at what he does. He's technically the best out of all the turtles if he applied himself. On the flip side, the worst one is the 2003 Mikey. Just if people think the 87 Mikey is the stoner one, this is the actual stoner.
Yep.
And it's more annoying because he's not a stoner teenager. He's a stoner dude in his late 20s. And that's what I hate. He's just so annoying, so like just not funny, and just like has to comment on everything in that like pre-MCU quippy way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just he's the worst part of every episode I watch, and I cannot stand. I really can't stand the voice cast for all of the 2012 or the 2003 series. It's not because they're not union. It kind of is because they're not union. It's a lot of their first roles, so it's like you kind of have to break your teeth somewhere.
Yeah.
So I get it, but it's like a lot of them are just not good. And like you said, like, because this is for kids, a lot of these voices you kind of hear all over the place. So it's like you have Joey Wheeler, you have Brock, like Mike Pollock, who still plays Dr. Eggman for the Sonic the Hedgehog games. Like he's in a lot of these episodes doing a pre-Dr. Eggman voice.
Yes.
And so it's like, just the 2003 Mikey, just my absolute least favorite. Yep. And then Leonardo, Leonardo's tough because there's so many different versions of him, and some kind of boil down to being just the same. Like he's Cyclops, basically a lot of the time.
Yes.
Except when they try to change him, like they did in Rise, where they were like, let's take away the burden of being a leader. What does that make him? Oh, that makes him the lovable rogue. Like, and so he's very quippy, and I get a lot of people not liking that because it's like that kind of changes Mikey's role because Mikey's less jokey.
Mm-hmm.
But I like Rise Leo. I don't think he's the best Leo, but I do like his eventual arc once it gets started. But he's also Ben Schwartz, and he's so genuinely funny in that show. Like, even when everybody thinks he's not funny, he's so funny.
And he happens to be like that guy who happens to voice like characters that are associated with Blue. He was Huey. He was it Huey or Dewey from DuckTales, and also Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and so it's like he did all three of these like kind of at the same time. So it's like he's three like very prominent Blue characters.
Yeah.
And so on the flip side, my least favorite, Leonardo. And he's not even really least favorite because he's bad. It's just the 87 Leo is just kind of there. He's the straight man. Even Cam Clark has said, like, he's the guy who everyone bounces off of.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's the way they played him. So like, he's not bad. I just don't like him as much because he's just there for a lot of it. Like, come on, guys, we got to defeat Shredder.
Yeah.
You know, turtle power. Like, he does have some really quirky things where it's like he gets hit in the head and then thinks he's D'Artagnan from the Musketeers. And it's like the turtles have to play along with him. So he has like these little nerdy tendencies, which is a neat thing that like later series will expand on. Like the 2012 series is really good about making Leo secretly a dork, like who watches Star Trek and Voltron and like all of those kind of shows. And like that, he emulates that to try and make himself a better leader, which is cool. But yeah, just there's a certain genesis to 87 Leo. He's just not fully cooked yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say though that the second crossover, the best thing about 87 Leonardo was like when they were fighting and all of a sudden like they actually used their weapons. It was like, that was violence, and the way his face looked priceless.
And like I actually prefer the Turtles Forever version of that crossover to the 2012 one. I think I'm one of those people that thinks the way they like everybody hates how they treated the 87 Turtles in that show, in that special. I actually think it's pretty accurate, but also like I was just coming off of binging the all 197 episodes.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was pretty well versed in them, even the European vacation season.
Yep. Let's see. So next question is from my buddy DM, also known as Grave 54. Out of all different variations of Master Splinter we got, which was your favorite? Splinter? Oh, that's easy. The best one, in my personal opinion, for Splinter is absolutely the one from the movies. Except for the third movie, but the first two movies, for sure.
Yeah.
Although a close second would be 2012. Close second for me. That's my answer.
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably go with the movies too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the movie one, I think, which is kind of funny because we were so used to being, a person turned into a rat, but this, that was the one where it was like, no, it's a rat that turns into a person, but it just works out so well. Still.
It's funny how that introduces, like how that introduced that to all of us, and that's his origin from the comic.
Yep.
Yeah, but they did once again, that's, hats off to, the production studio that worked on that because, for the Jim Henson Productions, because they made him feel alive. Like for a lot of the stuff, the facial animation and everything for it. And then even the basic fight scenes, like still managed to pull it off and look good, flipping over the shredder and, going from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my favorite one.
I did a 30-day tweet thread on that, and like the shredder fight at the end is like, what was really cool. It was a 30-day tweet thread I did for the 30th anniversary. It was really cool. I called it Pizza Dude. Pizza Dude's got 30 years. That's the hashtag.
Yep.
My favorite Splinter, again, I'm gonna go with the Rise version. They changed just enough to make him interesting, and a lot of people hate it because it's so different. You know, he looks like a small, like fat little guy, and it's like not who you would think is Splinter, but that's the trick.
Yeah.
It's like Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, where Luke didn't think he was this Jedi Master. And then as the show unfolds, you find out, oh, this Splinter is actually very skilled. But on the flip side, he's also a very bad parent. So his character arc is becoming the better dad. So like he starts in a very bad place, and then you find out why he looks the way he did, like why he looks the way he does, why he didn't train the turtles, because that's apparent in the first episode.
Yeah.
Like because they watched a lot of old martial arts movies. That's why it's funny. Like in that show, they don't say cowabunga. They do, but that's not their catchphrase. Not yet, anyway. It's hot soup, and that's because that was like the martial arts, like Bruce Lee guy they used to watch. That was his catchphrase, and they just thought it sounded cool, and they've never been to the surface, so they were like, everybody talks like this.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next question comes from Dari. If the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles could cross over with any video game franchises you wanted, what would it be, and what would be the gameplay be like? Well, in terms of crossover with video game franchises, I would personally go with a fighting game franchise. Like, I know, like, there in the comics, there's the TMNT crossover with Street Fighter, and I would have liked to have seen, like, what if there would have been, like, a general Nickelodeon versus Capcom, and it would have the TMNT. It would have all 4 Ninja Turtle characters, like, all 4 of the Turtles.
Right.
Versus, like, teaming up with other Nickelodeon characters to fight against characters from Capcom. You get Street Fighter, you get Resident Evil, you get Mega Man, you get Devil May Cry, Monster Hunter, Ace Attorney, and so much more. Versus, like, a lot of the Nickelodeon characters, they would find ways to make them work. But if it was just Nickelodeon, it was just Ninja Turtles themselves, because, like, I still stand by Nickelodeon versus Capcom. But if it was just Ninja Turtles on their own with a crossover from a different company that's video game related, this one is going to be extremely far-fetched, but Sonic. What would the gameplay be like? It would be more 3D based. Like, you would have Sonic's own segments, but then you have, like, Ninja Turtles having their own, like, beat 'em up style segments. I would probably do, like, 3D, make it 3D based to make it more sense. And also Sonic would join in with the beat 'em up segments, but then Sonic would have his own, like, Sonic gameplay, and the Turtles would have to try their best to catch up to Sonic. Could see. I also want that to be a comic, because IDW also does the Sonic comics. So they only ever had, like, one very small one-panel crossover in one of the Sonic Archie comics back in the 90s, where Sonic was in an underground sewer trying to get through something, and you see the Ninja Turtles like, wrong comic. Like, pass through. It did happen, kind of, but I would like for it to happen for real, both in comic form and in video game form. That's my answer.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for fighting game stuff, like, I enjoyed, like, no, we haven't mentioned it yet, but, like, they showed up in a very fun way in Injustice 2.
They did, yeah.
ESC characters you could use. I love the quips and so forth, but if we're talking a crossover video game, I have to go back to the crossover I mentioned earlier. I would want an Arkham City style Batman and Ninja Turtles, where you can be the Turtles running around Arkham, because that's half the fun. Everyone would be like, what kind of villain is this? What kind of monster shown at this time? You know, seeing them react to how Gotham is, I think, could be hilarious, for them kind of being out of town and visiting, as it was.
Yeah.
I would want that, like, just being able to run around and do that. I know it's basically just be reskinned Batman, but I don't care. I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
One I would honestly think would be really interesting. Probably would never happen. But like just trying to give it some thought.
Mhm.
I would love to see just some weird spinoff of Like a Dragon.
Ooh.
All right.
Yeah, like with Ichiban just
going.
meeting the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that would be a really fun game.
I think I
opportunities.
I saw someone draw that as a comic on Twitter.
Ooh,
Yes.
I'd have to see that.
I gotta go find it in my likes.
Yep.
If they're still available, because Twitter just got
You can, I think you still see your own likes, yeah. But yeah, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I honestly think like a Dragon and Ninja Turtles crossover would be a lot of fun, even if it's just non-canonical, like Dead Souls was.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. Yeah. All right.
It's hard for me. Like, I can't think of a video game crossover. I can think of the type of video game I want to see the Turtles in.
Yeah,
And that would be like an X-Men Legends Marvel
Ooh, an
Alliance dungeon
X-Men.
crawler.
Ooh,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't, but that's the thing. I don't think the Turtles would mesh well with the X-Men. Yes, technically they're both mutants, but the Turtles are mutants in Marvel the way that the Hulk is a mutant. They're mutates technically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can't think of a video game crossover that I would like of the Turtles. I can think of plenty of comic book crossovers. And my big one for like Marvel would be, the easy answer is Daredevil, but I think the Turtles and Spider-Man would be a lot of fun.
Yes.
But then also getting a little weirder, the Turtles and Hellboy would be an amazing crossover.
We're missing the obvious Turtles and Daredevil, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the easy answer.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which, I mean, again, that would be banger. Like, I think it would be too similar to Batman versus the Turtles, because it's like when they brought in like the Assassin's Guild, and that's pretty thematically similar to the Foot Clan already.
Right.
But I think like the Turtles and Hellboy just like doing weird supernatural stuff. Also, the Turtles and Gargoyles, like that's a cool crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if they did the X-Men, it'd have to be like the X-Force version that had like Dupe and all those in it, where it's super weird. That might work for you.
That'll be
Yeah.
great. Yeah. That's some good stuff. But one thing I also want to mention is in terms of gameplay, like I actually want, what I've actually been wanting for years was like an actual Ninja Turtles style. Like, if I know that Mutants in Manhattan for the PS4, Xbox One, and Steam got delisted, and that was from Platinum, that and Activision published it. I want Platinum Games to get another shot at Ninja Turtles, but under better circumstances, and they made a game that played a lot more like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, but with 4-player co-op.
Yeah.
And
Like,
that's
I got a
what I want.
story about that. When we had interviewed Tom Waltz a couple years ago, and he wrote the game, and thematically it was supposed to be a lot similar to the IDW comic. Like the art was based on Matteo Santalocco, who was the artist at the time, and he had let us know like they had cut the production time on the game and demanded that it come out with the 2016 movie. And that's why the multiplayer was cut. That's why a lot of things are so bare bones with that game. And it's like Platinum just like got screwed royally because they forced this deadline on them. It was supposed to come out after the movie.
Yeah, like I just really think that Platinum has it in them to make a fantastic TMNT game. I feel like if they were given the opportunity to try again, but with a different publisher, I think they would do a much better job. Although, imagine if Koei Tecmo got it and they made a new like a Ninja Turtles Warriors game, like
Turtles Muso, hell yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, that'd be sick.
I'd want all the foot soldiers to be robots, though. It's just more satisfying. Just
Yeah,
Yes.
Keep the colors from the other games.
We got 2 more questions left. This one's from Dragonflame. Why is the first TMNT movie the best one? Just kidding, but that's how I feel. You could talk about which movie's your favorite. We pretty much already did, for the most part. But honestly, it's a toss-up between the 1990 movie and Mutant Mayhem for me.
I think a lot of it just like, because if you really kind of get down to the basics of it, like the first TMNT movie is technically an indie movie.
Yes.
Yep.
Like it wasn't really like
grossing one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so.
And I feel like there wasn't like a lot of
Blair Witch knocked it out.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Dang it.
But
yeah, so it's like I feel like there was a lot of stuff like, yeah, obviously like they were trying to cater to like a mass audience and stuff, but it doesn't have like, I feel like that first movie like even with like the Domino's product placement or whatever, I feel like they just wanted to really just make an entertaining Ninja Turtles movie and not just Hollywood schlock. I mean, as cheesy as it is, like it's just it does feel like there was more heart put into that.
Yeah, it got really dark at some points, and straight up, Casey intended to kill a man right at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops! I just
absolutely.
hit this thing, and you're gonna die.
Yep. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's why that first movie was so special, and it's just like the other 2 movies are like okay.
I'll because we've all kind of got the same answer for that, but I'm going to throw out a different thing to think about. Is that the Michael Bay movies, the 2014 and 2016 Out of the Shadows, have the best dynamic between the turtles before Mutant Mayhem came out.
I do remember and love the elevator scene. They just started.
The elevator scene is great, but it's like the way the turtles interact with each other.
Yeah.
In those movies, that's some of the best, like, we're brothers that annoy the shit out of each other that any of the movies have ever done.
Yeah, I mean, problems aside with the first one, that second one is just, if you were a fan of the old cartoon, it is the best modern live action I think they've done.
Absolutely.
Take on that. The first movie will always have a place in my heart. That is the one that I will always go to because I was at that perfect age where I could go see it in the theaters. It was this huge event. Comic books had advertisements, and of course I'd see stuff on, watching the cartoon. I'd see the commercials, and it was everywhere. It's like the '89 Batman for me when I got to see that. That will always stick in my mind, and it's just gonna always end up being that one. The other ones can be enjoyable, but that one, just like the cartoon, is going to be the movie that comes to mind for me.
Yep.
So.
All right. Let's see. So there's one last question. All right. So this one's from H Bomb and Friends. What is the worst version of TMNT? And he says, why is it the Saban live action show from the late 90s? That's actually as much as I'm not the biggest fan of that show, or rather that incarnation, it's actually not my least favorite. No.
Really?
You would think it is. It's actually not my least favorite. It's in the bottom, that's for sure. It's nowhere near close to being like any the worst in my opinion, but it's not the best. You want to know what I think the worst is? I personally think that the worst incarnation of TMNT happens to be the third movie.
Yeah.
I hate the third movie so much.
The third movie, and this is what I wanted to talk about earlier. I know I'm dropping like a bunch of like trivia. So I'm sorry I'm dragging this all out.
Oh, it's great. Go for it.
The third movie is really interesting because besides the first movie practically adapting Mirage like issues, the third movie adapts the tone of Mirage.
Yes.
In a way that people don't think of, because a lot of people haven't either read Mirage in years or they never really read past the first couple issues, where you start to get into the more melancholy aspect of the Mirage comic, which I feel like it's more that aspect than it is like dark and gritty. But the third movie was supposed to be kind of this three-way multimedia crossover, which you brought up Renette earlier. She was the timestress. And the cartoon, the movie, and the comic were all kind of supposed to cross over at the same time. And so and then it all fell apart. And then that's why like the movie feels like it's kind of missing something, but there's a comic and an episode where all the turtles like go back to Japan, and it's like all three of these were supposed to be connected at the same time. And Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were more heavily involved with Turtles 3 than they were with Secret of the Ooze, which is why it kind of shifts back to a little bit more of the tone of the first movie. But unfortunately, it's a lot cheaper because, you know, diminishing returns, and Jim Henson Company didn't come back for it. So the suits, I think the suits articulate very well in the face. They're just really ugly.
Yeah.
Like, I think the lip sync is very good, but yeah, like I'm hesitant to definitively say that's the worst. Which is why I want to talk about my least favorite is the 2003 series. I think a big part of that is that like it's the first thing to kind of, since the 1990 movie, to adapt the comic, but it doesn't adapt the comic like super accurately, and also it doesn't do it that much to where you could be like, this is a comic book accurate TV show, because it changes a ton of stuff and it recontextualizes things from the comic that I think the comic did better.
Yeah.
But you guys were saying earlier, the tone is all over the place for the 2003 series, like because it does want to address these comic book issues, but then it also wants to do a weird story where an evil trash man is kidnapping homeless people and making them live on Trash Island.
Yeah.
It's like the tone is all over the place, and this is just the first season.
Yeah.
And it's just as goofy as the 87 series. And so and so for people to say like this show is a lot darker, the 2012 show gets darker. Like Splinter is killed twice in that show. They go back in time and kill him again. Like,
damn.
It's a spoiler, sorry. But it's like the 2012 show gets darker than the 2003 series did.
Yeah.
I think the big part of it is that a lot of the people who grew up with the 2003 show are now kind of getting into kind of how we are with the 87 show, where like that was our first version, which is why that holds a special place in our hearts. Right. The 2003 series people are getting to be in their, you know, their 30s now.
Yeah.
And they're being very vocal about how this show is the best. And it's like, well, yeah, because that was your first one. That was your first serialized TV show.
Yep.
And that's not to diminish it, but I think you're not able to weigh it correctly. Because I can look at the 87 show and it holds a special place in my heart, but I can also acknowledge that it's not very good for huge parts of it. Yep. You know, besides that first season, I think the first season still holds up. But after that, no. And I don't think 2003 fans have gotten to a point where they can do that with their show.
Yep.
And my co-host Spencer, he's exactly who I'm talking about. I love him to death. He loves that show to death. It's his favorite version. And as we review each episode each week, like I'm constantly like, I don't think this is as great as you think it is, bud.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, so, you know, I always look at it when, you know, people say, which is your least favorite of something. And I've kind of, you know, I'm going to be 45 this year. I've been watching cartoons and stuff for decades at this point. Different loves for different things. And one thing I've learned that I think a lot of other nerds need to learn, things are going to change over time. Not everything is going to be for you. I learned that with Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, you know, all these things I grew up with. Every variation that comes out is going to be someone's favorite, but it's not always going to be something you connect with, and that's fine. But everybody kind of needs to get over this whole thing where I don't like this, so you shouldn't like it. And
Yeah.
it comes down like, okay, I'm not a fan of the live action ones. To me, that is the worst one. But I also know other people that enjoyed that. That's fine. And I learned that lesson like with Transformers. Beast Wars was my little brother. He got into that, and I was like, "Oh, why is it a monkey? Why instead of a truck?
Truck not monkey."
Exactly, that whole argument. But I've learned to enjoy it over time. And then when I remember seeing Transformers animated, going, "This is absolutely terrible. Why are they doing this?" And it became one of my favorites because of how loving they were actually in there. I mean, they got Weird Al to be in it in the perfect role.
God, I love him as Wreck-Gar.
Like I remember, and what was it? We got to San Diego Comic-Con the second time I actually got to go. We saw a giant statue of Optimus Prime, and me and Brent were looking at it going, "What is this knockoff crap? Why is this?" That's the first time we'd ever seen it. It's this giant life-size statue, and we're like, and then we found out inside this is the actual show, and it became another one of our favorites.
Oh,
and
wow.
like, I've tried to learn to give things a chance, and then if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. Move on. You're fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not. No one's gonna hurt you. Your old show is still there. Not everything has to be for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a lesson that it took me time to learn growing up. I was that stubborn nerd for some things. I think we all are. And that's the hard part of these kind of questions. So I don't want it to be like, man, he's really ragging on the live action ones. Like, yeah, it wasn't for me. If you want an answer, I'll give it to you, but someone enjoys it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not terrible.
Because I don't really have like a least favorite incarnation. Like I have a least memorable one, which I would say is probably the 2007 CGI movie. I feel like I did watch it, and I don't even remember like much of it. It's just I just don't really have like memories of it, or just I should say I don't have memories of it. I just don't have it. It's just not memorable, I should say.
The turtles don't even drive the plot of that movie.
Yeah,
that's how like boring that movie is. It did give us Chris Evans as Casey Jones, which I think is very good.
Yeah,
but it's just kind of an movie. It's my least favorite of all the movies.
I think it was
because the thing as bad as like
later.
As bad as like the third live action movie was, like I have memories of that. I have like there are memorable moments of that movie, like even if it's like in retrospect wasn't that great. But it's just when I think about the 2007 movie, it's just like I can't really think of anything about that movie other than like Donatello being a tech support person.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this real quick. That third movie, as it is, exactly line for line, if it was done as an animated movie, do you think people would have, because it feels like it wasn't a long episode of the cartoon, time travel and weird stuff like that. If it was animated, I think people would have been like, "Oh, this is great. It's an animated movie," and move on.
Well,
because I feel like there were probably.
Go ahead.
I feel like there would definitely be a lot more like artistic expression if it was animated. Like I feel like a lot of those scenes would have like maybe been a little more punchier if it was animated.
Yeah,
but
it would cut down on the amount of people saying that those costumes are terrible, which would be nice.
Yeah, I think the live action compared it to the first two when it feels like it should have been more of a cartoon.
Yeah.
It's very bright. It's the brightest of the three movies, and I think that does kind of bring it down. You see a lot more of the flaws with the costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's not really a way you could do it because there's so many daytime outside scenes.
Yeah.
But I think if the color grading on that movie was, a little bit darker, I think that would have gone a long way to really selling the tone better. That I mentioned, because like that movie, like I said, is really melancholy. Like Mikey wants to leave because he hates his life in New York. Like he's accepted in the past and wants to leave. Like that's big for a Turtles movie. It's also the first Turtles movie, like mainstream thing at that time without the Shredder.
Yep.
Like, a lot of people don't recognize it for that fact. Like that's huge.
Yep. And they ended up having Karai instead as one of the villains. Although she wasn't exactly a full-on villain per se, she was not aligned with the Turtles. for the most part.
Are you talking about Mitsu?
Oh, Mitsu? Oh, that's
yeah, correct. Karai's not in the movie.
Oh, TMNT 3. Oh, I thought you were talking about the TMNT 2007 CGI movie. Sorry.
Oh, I know. I was talking about we were talking about the 2003 movie.
All right,
or
so
the Turtles 3 movie.
Fun fact, Mitsu was supposed to be in TMNT Tournament Fighters for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
But because the movie did not do well, they decided to change that character up to Asuka. So Asuka was originally supposed to be tied to the third Ninja Turtles movie, but they decided to make her like an OC for that game.
Yeah, I think some of the behind the scenes stuff in the Cowabunga collection, I think something says Mitsu still.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
She was planned to be Mitsu from the third movie. Yeah. But that's basically Ninja Turtles. Like, so Ninja Turtles is absolutely, without a doubt, like one series that I'm glad to have been a part of, like with fandoms as well as being into the shows, comics, and everything, games. It's something I'm glad to be a part of. And I have to thank all three of you for being a part of this podcast tonight.
This was really, really fun.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you guys. This has been a great, fun discussion.
Yep. So before we sign off, Zen, where can we find you?
You can find me over on the hellhole that is Twitter at ZensPath, or you can find for our actual podcast at ZensPath Podcast. And then we have episodes usually every week of the ZensPath Entertainment Network podcast. We did what we call an extra quarter episode this week because I was on vacation, where Steven and I talked about Snatcher, the game back on the Sega CD and everything.
Yes.
Just started playing that.
I recently played it for the very first time. We recorded it, and we have all the videos over at youtube.com/ZensPathCom.
Nice.
Ooh.
So go check it out. It's but like I said, it's my very first time ever playing it or seeing it, and it's great.
I'm excited. I just was able to get it to work on my Steam Deck, and very excited to keep playing it.
Nice.
Awesome. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it as well. Like I said, that's what we break into on the episode, is talking about, because it's his favorite game. So yeah.
It's such a trip because I remember seeing it in a gaming magazine, and just like some of the parts in there where you're like, oh.
Yeah, we talk about the differences and a lot of the other stuff too. And then one last thing, if you're playing D&D, talking about Ninja Turtles references, this is my character for D&D, which you can tell is basically just Donatello as a
nice.
My character. So
yep. All right, Rocketeer, where can we find you?
You can find me anywhere on the internet at ItsTheRocketeer. That's ITS The Rocketeer. That is everything. All socials. On my Instagram, I do toy photography. I post that also on the hellhole that is Twitter. But you can catch me weekly on the Ninja Turtle Power Hour podcast. So you can look that up. There's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are where we are most active. Every Tuesday is a new episode. We do post, like, if you're behind on the comics, we let you know what every comic is coming out every Wednesday. And that's us.
I just subscribed.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And Curt, where can we find you?
You can find me all over, though I haven't really been as active on like YouTube or Twitch as I have been like the past few years. Like this year, I've just developed my body's just deteriorating at this point. I developed hypertensive retinopathy, which really screws up my vision. So I haven't really been at my computer a lot. So I haven't really been Twitch streaming or doing a lot of stuff on the computer as much. I've been having a lot of kidney issues. So it's just a lot of the stuff, like trying to go out to as many conventions this year hasn't really been in the cards. But I'm really trying to get back into the swing of things. My vision is like, it's not, my eyes aren't burning when I'm at the computer as much, so that's good. So I want to try and get back to Twitch streaming. You can find me twitch.tv/Curt underscore dog. YouTube, I'm Curt Dogg. Basically, like, you can go to my website, www.curt.dog, and it'll have all my socials on there. And yeah, like I said earlier, I do a game show at various gaming conventions like PAX and MagFest and MagWest, called Double Nintendo, and I definitely plan on bringing that back for this year's PAX West and MagWest, and hopefully coming back to MagFest proper as well. Yeah, and hopefully, yeah, I can be as active enough to do those as I was before.
Well, if you're gonna go to MagFest, I hope to see you there because next year I should be going to my very first MagFest. So.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, you're gonna love it. MagFest is like my favorite convention out of all the ones I do. Yeah, MagFest is definitely top tier.
It's on my bucket list, but yes.
Yeah.
Great episode, and absolutely had a great time talking about Ninja Turtles with the three of you. It was amazing. And once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So in terms of what the next episode is going to be, this show is going to be taking a summer break, but I will be back in the fall with episode 47, which will be storytelling in video games. So stay tuned for that. That's going to happen in September. So we'll be taking some time off from this show because it's summer, and obviously with summer I want to do summer things like go out and all that stuff. But yeah, so I'll let you guys know the full details on when in September we're coming back as time rolls on. But yeah, but that's going to do it. I really appreciate everybody. In addition to the three of you for coming in and being a part of this, I appreciate everybody that came in and chat, that at least the Twitch chat, to watch the stream and interacted. And for those who are going to be watching this on YouTube, obviously I appreciate you guys watching on YouTube as well. So as always, make sure to take care of yourselves. Be awesome. Stay awesome. Tell your loved ones you love them. Check up on them as always. Fight for your lasting peace. And I'll see you guys next time. And Turtle Power!
Turtle Power!
Hot soup.
Bunga.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Hey.